Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто водить всяке озброєння, різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 882 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And for a historic first, we've seen a combination of Russian and Chinese bombers near Alaska, and they've been intercepted. And also, we have other major news as well about NATO troops around Russian borders. But with that, it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and also the news of the rising tensions around the world, as we've been able to hear breaking news today that a joint Russian-Chinese bomber force was off the coast of Alaska, intercepted by the United States Strategic Air Command, and turned around. This is a historic first, as this is the first time ever that we have seen joint military actions taken by the Russians and Chinese in the form of a coalition against the United States, even in a non-combatant form. We were also able to hear breaking news as well that a large multinational coalition of NATO forces are beginning to build up against the Russian border just north of St. Petersburg and along the Finnish-Russian border. A major development, and once again showing that the Russians have been outplayed so far in the war in Ukraine, as while they attempted to try and avoid a larger border with NATO, they inadvertently ended up getting one anyways, with NATO now joining, and now a massive NATO coalition building up in that area along the Finnish border, threatening the second largest city in the Russian Federation, St. Petersburg. Not only that, we were also able to hear major news from inside the Russian Federation itself, as we were able to hear that another major drone attack occurred on the city of Kursk and appears to have caused some damage to military infrastructure within the city. Not only that, we were able to confirm overnight, although I did not put a marker down on this, you were able to see this in the Short War summary earlier today, that a Russian drone did in fact land inside of Romania, exploding near to the port of Izmail, close to the location that we had supposed it would have crashed at last night. Once again showing that Russian bombs are landing on NATO territory, and once again bringing up the question about what should be done about the war in Ukraine in NATO and further Russian aggression. We've also been able to...
Big news night. It's crazy.
And it really is a huge news night. And not only that, we have also been able to hear about Ukrainian successes around the Vovchansk area as they've continued to fight the Russian Federation in that area. We were also able to hear that the Ukrainians are holding the Russians back in Chasiv Yar and near the Kremenna Forest. But we did hear a little bit of unfortunate news today as Ukrainian forces were nearly encircled as a part of, I believe it was the 31st Brigade's forces, near to the town of Prokhorets, along the railroad berm that travels from the city of Avdiivka. It appears that those soldiers are in a little bit of a precarious situation, but they are currently conducting a withdrawal from the village and refortifying their lines right outside the village of Prokhorets at this moment. But nevertheless, we have a massive amount of news at this moment tonight, and it is going to be a pretty wild night news-wise. I mean, it is absolutely insane. Sometimes we have some good news, and usually it's about one big story per day. Today we have about 3 major stories to cover for y'all, and we're going to be moving on outside of Ukraine, outside of East Asia. We're going to be moving all the way to North America. One of the few times in this channel's history that we have had breaking news occur on a strategic international level in the area of North America, as we got breaking news today that Chinese and Russian bombers were intercepted by the United States Air Force today near to the area of Alaska. From what we understand, this is a picture from the interception, and we can also see that these aircraft are in fact marked as Alaskan, I believe, Air National Guard F-22s. They do have AK on their tail fin, which would suggest these are Alaskan F-22s, but we can also see one of those Russian Tu-95 Bears. We also were able to hear other breaking news as well, that not only were there 2 Tu-95s traveling near to the area of American airspace and almost plotting a path to violate American airspace, we were also able to hear of something that is also equally shocking: the arrival and appearance of 2 Jian H-6 strategic bombers of the People's Liberation Army Air Force of the People's Republic of China. 2 of these were also spotted within the area as well, attempting to violate or breach American airspace near to the area of Alaska at the exact same time that the Tu-95s were. These Jian H-6s were also intercepted by the United States Air Command in the area and were turned around. But this is a very concerning and very dangerous development. For the first time ever in the history of the world, The Russians and the Chinese have both conducted joint military efforts against the United States. Of course, when I say against the United States, some people are saying, well, it wasn't an active war, and that you would be right on, but this was nevertheless a military action. The pilots flying these planes are not working for Delta or Lufthansa. These guys are working for the People's Liberation Army Air Force, an armed wing of the People's Liberation Army, which is directly reporting to the People's Republic of China and the Central Military Committee of the Chinese nation. At the exact same time, the Russian Federation's Tu-95s are flown by Russian Air Force pilots that are a part of an armed wing of the Russian Ministry of Defense, and the Ministry of Defense reports directly to the Russian Federation's government. These were non-war, according to the Chinese, this would be non-war military activities, also called NWMA, but nevertheless, once again, attempting a form of low-level coercion in joint efforts with the Russian Federation against the United States of America. This is something that I have to say is very concerning at a bare minimum, and it is starting to show that the diplomatic ebbs and flows of the Asian sphere are beginning to drastically change over the past few years, with an emerging and growing China now, of course, jutting its head out of the area and starting to look around the world as it's starting to work on its way of being a major global superpower, one that can rival or even outdo the United States by 2049. We are now seeing that they are starting to draw in many nations, or attempt to draw in many nations, to their sphere of influence, and one of those countries is the Russian Federation. We have seen not only this joint attempt by Russia and China to violate U.S. airspace near Alaska, we have also seen just yesterday that a joint Russian and Chinese naval exercise was conducted within the area of the South China Sea, once again showing that as far as the military is concerned for the People's Republic of China and also the Russian Federation, they are starting to tie into each other a lot recently, and it's starting to show that the Chinese are not in that interesting kind of conundrum that they have been in since the mid-70s up until the present day, where they were communist, but they weren't really a big fan of the Soviet Union, and then afterwards the Russian Federation, and decided to pursue stronger American ties. Now they are starting to shift that back towards the Russians, and starting to have a lot more open and more friendly relations with the Russian Federation than they are with the United States. And their attempts at non-war military activities over the past 2 days, including the joint naval military exercise in the South China Sea and the attempt to violate American airspace and off the coast of Alaska just today, is once again showing us that a brand new major sphere is starting to be formed with the Chinese, and it is currently in its infancy and will continue to grow well on into the future. But this is
also, Enforcer, one thing real quick as well. I've been seeing a lot of people on Twitter and other places as well. They've been saying that this was actually expected, and we were told by NORAD that this might be occurring around this time that we just now saw it occur. But that's actually not true. What NORAD told us, I believe it was about, let's see here, on March the 14th, NORAD warned U.S. lawmakers that China would try to enter the ADIZ zone, the Identification of Aircraft Zone of Alaska, but we were not told that it would be a joint Russia and Chinese venture into our airspace. That is something that is actually very shocking to me as well, to see that both China and Russia are doing this to make a statement to the United States themselves that they plan on trying to provoke something, or they're going to both unilaterally and both bilaterally actually come in here and try to test our airspace. That to me is very concerning and very alarming, that it appears their relationship is actually deeper than previously expected for them to be making such a bold statement by doing this right now. That's very shocking to me.
It is very shocking, and usually we do not cover these kinds of bomber interceptions. Some of y'all, if y'all pay attention to bomber interceptions, may actually know that it was around 3 days ago that the Russian Federation scrambled MiG-31s and MiG-29s to intercept American B-52s that were flying near Russian airspace in the area of the Barents Sea. These kinds of bomber interceptions from both sides are fairly common, and they're usually meant as a test to see what kind of reaction they're going to be getting from the other nation's air defense, so that way they can get an idea about combat readiness of those forces if a conventional war or a nuclear exchange was to begin immediately at some point. That's generally the point of these tests. But the fact that the Russians and the Chinese did this together at the exact same time is what makes this single event a major and very concerning deal. It's not that the bombers flying close to America or American airspace is the dangerous deal about this. This is actually fairly mundane. It's the diplomatic consequences of this specific bomber interception that happened today that is going to be very important to look at going on into the future. You have to keep in mind that joint military activities in between different countries is something that is not really done a lot out there in the world, unless if you're starting to grow into being allies with each other. Joint military exercises happen in between the United States and the UK, the US and Canada, US and Germany, the United States and France, all kinds of countries we are able to conduct joint military operations with. But notice all the countries that I'm saying we conduct joint military operations with are our allies. They're either in NATO or they're in some other kind of a defensive pact in some other part of our sphere of influence. But before I continue with that, Matthew has additional breaking news. What do we have, Matthew?
All right, so real quick, I did see someone in the live chat. It was actually Barry Badrinath. He said that I do not believe Russia or China ever did this, even in the Cold War, and can we confirm that information? And we did just get an article here confirming that U.S. defense officials have said for a fact that this was the first time that Russian and Chinese military aircraft entered the Alaska ADIZ at the exact same time. Also, it's believed that they were in coordination. It was not coincidence they both showed up at the exact same time. Obviously, they were working together. And also, we're told that the aircraft that intercepted the Chinese and Russian bombers were American F-16s and F-35s, as well as Canadian CF-18s, and they were all involved in the intercept. So it was actually a coalition of America and also Canada coming out to meet these aircraft. So it's very confirmed by U.S. officials that this is indeed the first time this has ever happened in history.
Also, there would have never been a diplomatic atmosphere historically throughout the entirety of the Cold War where the Russians and the Chinese would have ever conducted military actions jointly, because actually through most of the Cold War, they ended up occasionally shooting at each other across the border, if y'all didn't know. So that is something that we do know is quite clear, and we are once again getting confirmation from the United States Department of Defense. This is a major historic first. And getting back to what I was saying just a moment ago, the fact that the Russians and the Chinese have conducted this joint military action together is showing several things. The first is that the Russian and Chinese militaries are having an incredibly large and incredibly in-depth amount of communication with each other. The fact that this attempt was conducted by both countries at the same time shows that not only is the Russian Air Force and the PLAAF having communications with each other, but even lower level, lower echelon units such as bomber wings or bomber brigades are communicating with each other at this point from Russia and China, and they're having this kind of in-depth communication to be able to conduct these attempted violations of American airspace near Alaska. That kind of communication is showing incredibly strong ties in between the two countries militarily, and we're seeing the exact same thing in the South China Sea as well currently, as we are seeing that they conducted a joint naval exercise recently as well, once again showing that there's a heavy amount of communication in between the Russian Navy and the Chinese Navy as well. This is all going to show that the Russians are pulling them, well, really the Chinese are pulling the Russians into the Chinese sphere. It is actually happening a lot faster than we were expecting at this point. They are moving almost at a light speed pace to be a joint sphere moving on in the future. And this means that we have to largely view the Russians and the Chinese not as separate entities, of course separate entities when analyzing their actions and behaviors, but as far as their existence in the world, they are about on the level at this point. I would say give it about another 2 years maybe, or maybe even less than that, but they will be on a level to compete with the United States and NATO's relationship that will be close to the relationship in between Russia and China, or really China and Russia, because China will have the pants in that relationship, being the larger economic and military power. But nevertheless, it is very concerning to see something happen like this really over the past few hours, really. This happened very recently, and it is a major breaking news development. I cannot stress that enough, because we don't ever see this kind of stuff happen. This is the first time that this has ever happened. And go ahead.
It makes you wonder. It makes you wonder exactly what prompted this, because I really don't see any solidly direct provocation of this event. I'm wondering if maybe they had this planned for maybe a couple of weeks and then they finally did it. Maybe it was not a spur of the moment thing. I would assume it had some planning behind it, but you never really know. I wonder if it was months in advance planned, or was it more like weeks in advance planned? Because depending on how soon it was planned out, that could indicate that maybe there was a recent provocation that caused them to team up together to send the message to the USA. I'm not really sure about that, though.
That is an interesting question. Maybe we'll we'll be able to find out. Well, we probably won't be able to find any information about that. The Chinese might release something on it and talk about the plan and all that in the future. I have a feeling they probably will not, because it's not really about sending a message to the West. This is really more so trying to send a message to the Russians by showing that the Chinese can be their friends, and maybe they need to even get a little bit closer together diplomatically, to the point of maybe creating some sort of a defensive pact, or maybe some form of an economic and military alliance as well. We don't really know, but still, getting back to what I was saying here about Russia and China, I have to lay out a little bit of the historical framework here that we're dealing with to kind of let y'all know how big of a thing this is, because a lot of people would go, well, duh, China and Russia have always been friends, and that would be incredibly ignorant to say, actually, because historically they actually were never friends up until very recently. And let's just talk, I'm not going to talk about all of Chinese history from like the Qing, well, not the Qing era, but like the Han Dynasty. I'm not talking about all the way back then. I'm going to be talking about in the incredibly modern day, from the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949 up until the present day. Stalin did not like the Chinese, and while he did give them Manchuria, he was not at all a big fan of Mao Zedong and the Chinese government, or Mao Zedong if you want to call him that, considering that Zedong, everyone, when I say that, goes, he said it. But Mao Zedong was not really a big fan of Stalin. Stalin wasn't really a big fan of him. So China and the Soviet Union had a little bit of an uneasy relation. Flatlined right now. Reggie. And so we are back now. So getting back to what I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, during the Brezhnev era, that's when things started to get incredibly dangerous in between the Russians and the Chinese, because the Chinese actually claim some islands in the Amur River in between China and Russia, and they still do to this day. But back in the day, the Chinese actually tried to send some guys out in the PLA to claim those islands for China. The Soviet border guards ended up refusing them to take the islands, of course, and they started shooting at each other. Like, they actually got into small border skirmishes in Manchuria against the Soviet Union for some time. And it became so concerning that a lot of people actually thought that China and the Soviet Union were going to be going to war soon. And because of that, China ended up befriending the United States, and that's why Nixon went to China. And since that point, from about 1975 onwards, China and the United States have had a fairly friendly relationship, although having two completely different governments. Of course, we have major economic relations with them. The Chinese produced a large amount of consumer goods, or for a large part, they were just kind of all right. You know, there wasn't really that much wrong with them. We weren't really doing a lot with them. And then recently, we started to trade with them a great deal. And for that reason, Chinese-American relations were, of course, better than Chinese-Russian relations. Now, recently, China is starting to make this shift, and according to Xi Jinping in his 5th plenum of the 19th People's Congress, which happened in 2021, he stated that the People's Republic of China had become a mildly prosperous society. And that is a very important thing that he said. And also, thank you, Stephen Gerrard. Nixon did go to China in 72, not 75, correction. But anyways, what's important about what Xi Jinping said in the 5th plenum of the 19th People's Congress is that he said that China was becoming a mildly prosperous society. China gauges their economic prosperity off of the United States and considers the United States the gold standard. So in the United States, the service economy is the gold standard, meaning that industrial output isn't really prioritized, but the service and consumer levels of industry is what is really hit home here in America. And that's the major part of the U.S. economy these days. China wants to become like that and end up creating a mini China of their own somewhere else. And that's where the One Belt, One Road program ties in, and that's why they're trying to rapidly develop Eastern Africa and other areas of the world, is so that way those areas can pretty much become China's version of China to them, if y'all get what I'm saying about the manufacturing base and all that. And so they are starting to move away from having that really deep American relationship because of the massive trade deficit we had with them, and they're starting to move into being a service economy, much like ours. And for that reason, their economic ties are starting to weaken with the United States, and also their diplomatic ties are starting to weaken as they're becoming self-sufficient, and they're able to do their own things in their own sphere, and the United States going on into the future won't really be able to have that much impact or that much sway on Chinese decision-making long-term. Because of that, the Chinese are now starting to do whatever they want and starting to consolidate their own sphere of influence. And one of the countries they're going to consolidate with is the Russian Federation. While it's not a part of the East Indian megasphere, well, really the Indian Ocean megasphere that we're thinking they're going to be creating here within the next 20 years, the Russian Federation is still a very large country to China's north, and while they may not have a large population and a large economy, they do have a wildly abundant and pretty much unending amount of raw materials and resources that are incredibly cheap, very inexpensive, and usually most developing countries like to get access to incredibly cheap and wildly abundant materials. And the Russian Federation has nothing but that to provide to the Chinese. And while the Chinese are kind of shifting from a developing nation to a developed nation, although the tofu drag construction isn't doing them any favors with that, they do want those cheap materials still, because who wouldn't want cheap materials? That is something that is just incredibly important to economic growth, is being able to try and get the cheapest amount of the largest quantity of resources possible. And so the Chinese are trying to draw the Russians in so that way they can get access to those resources. And to do that, they're going to tie themselves, well, they're going to tie Russia to China economically and militarily. By doing both of those things, Russia becomes a part of China's sphere, and China gets the access to all of the raw materials as cheap as they can possibly get them well on into the future to continue their sphere building. And that is why this Russian and Chinese joint effort near the Alaskan border, in this massive kind of a rabbit hole sort of a sense, is a very big deal. And it's starting to show that that move, that tectonic shift, is starting to happen in Chinese diplomatic decision making, and that the Russian Federation is starting to quickly be pulled into a Chinese sphere instead of having its own recognizable Russian sphere of influence, no matter how large or insignificant people say it is. But with that, a lot of y'all have thrown in a lot of comments on this. And I gotta say, I had to take a second there, Matthew. I don't know if you could tell. Like, I was sitting there like, dang, that was a lot for me to try and unpack and say in an incredibly short span of time. But a lot of people are talking about this historic first of the small fleet of Chinese and Russian bombers that were just off of Alaska's coast. And a lot of people have been throwing in their thoughts and their takes on this. And a lot of people are saying that they are much deeper allies than the world is expecting at the moment. And it's just being kept a little low key because the Chinese generally are very low key about their foreign dealings. They like it that way because it makes it very hard for Western governments and also citizens in Western nations like all of us to be able to pay attention to what the Chinese are actually doing out there in the world. Others are saying it's just a test and it's not really that serious. Some are saying that it seems ominous, but they want a little bit more information on this before they actually make a decision. And some are unsure and undecided, even with the information we have, and maybe unsure and undecided, even with additional information. But loads of people are weighing in on this and really giving their opinion on what is going on in between the Russian Federation and China. And Matthew, what are you thinking about it as well?
So it looks like 56% of the audience said that Russia and China are apparently deeper allies than expected before, while 24% said it's just a test and it's really not that serious, while 15% said it seems ominous but I need some more information. And on this one, I'm kind of with the enforcer. Actually, I'm not kind of with him. I'm actually all the way with him on his opinion. This is a very rapid increase in the positive relationship between China and Russia. I did not expect that the relationship would go this deep for China to be able to put their neck out on a chopping block to go out there with Russia to try to intimidate the United States. That is a shocker to me. And I'm definitely with the 56%. For them to be doing this out in the public to send a message, and this is intended to send a message to the United States, this indicates that maybe China and Russia might have something nefarious planned in the future. And maybe China might eventually decide to help Russia out a little bit more than they were before with more aid and also more economic support. So that could indicate that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, once again, like I was laying out in like that huge, freaking wild, almost schizophrenic sounding rabbit hole, because I had to literally jump from everywhere and talk about how this is working and how this is just a small part of it, but still showing that it's happening. I would say that they certainly are deeper allies than expected, and a lot sooner than expected. Because one thing is obvious, and this is something that anyone with a brain would see, is that the Russian sphere is not going to ever exist again. The Russians are too economically weak. All of the partners in their mini-sphere are also economically weak as well. And with all of that combined, really just the economic weakness, they would never be able to fund or operate their own sphere of influence and protect those interests that they may have. war in Ukraine for the Russians is really some sort of a fleeting pipe dream, that Russia is as great and grand as it used to be, and it can reclaim its imperial heritage and try and be as great and prosperous a country as it used to be back in the day, although even then it wasn't really that prosperous. So, of course, with that in mind, the Russians are going to start moving into another larger sphere. It's very clear that there's only two options, China or America. And America certainly as hell is not an option, because the Russians are openly hostile against the West and the United States specifically. And so for that reason, they're going to move towards the Chinese sphere. This is pretty much a natural evolution of the spheres of influence in the world, in my opinion. And I think that this is certainly an extenuation of that in a pretty big sense, actually. This is a pretty big milestone achievement here, and it's even showing at a much deeper level that there is a lot of intercommunication right now in between the Russian and Chinese government that we're not getting to hear about, because we know at this point the militaries are deeply connected. But for the militaries to be deeply connected and to be able to communicate on this level, to coordinate something like this, the governments themselves would have to be deeply interconnected and have a deep level of communication with each other for the militaries to be authorized to work with each other to create this plan and execute it like we saw today. It is showing a lot. I mean, it's showing loads that it's really like this one thing right here off the coast of Alaska is really the tip of the iceberg about what all this is showing. You can get a lot out of it, and I would have to say that it is very concerning what we're getting out of it. Because now
another big question as well is, what is the United States going to do to drive China and Russia apart? Because unfortunately, while we did have to sanction Russia, we had to do that because obviously Russia is invading a sovereign country and they had to be punished. But also at the same time, the sanctions have also kind of pushed China and Russia closer together because it's out of necessity. Russia has to go somewhere to get aid and also support. And where do they go? They obviously go to China for that. So the real question to me is, what is the U.S. and the Western world going to try to do to try to weaken the relationship between the two countries, if that's even possible at the moment?
You know, that's a good question. How in the world could the Russians and the Chinese be driven apart from each other? That's a great question. I'm trying to think about that.
And with the current ways, like with the current sanctions in place, like on Russia because of their war in Ukraine, it's nearly impossible to drive those two apart because Russia has nowhere else to go. They're forced to go to China. So what we've done here through our goodwill sort of mindset here by trying to help out Ukraine is we've sort of created a bigger monster that we're now having to figure out how to deal with, because now that we're seeing that they're really teaming up very intimately and closely together, and now they're threatening the United States right here on the Alaskan border with their planes together, which is the first time in history. We obviously have created a monster here. I don't think there was any way to avoid creating that monster. We had to punish Russia, but now we have even a bigger problem to deal with that we're going to figure out really quickly, because this thing is rapidly deteriorating in a way the West really doesn't want.
I'm trying to think of how in the world we could try and split the Russians and the Chinese apart while you were talking right there. It would be really hard. Like, the only point of friction I can think of at this point are those little islands in the Amur River. That's it. Like, that's all that there is that you could probably drive them a wedge with. But even then, that's not that big of a wedge. The Russians would probably give those up because they're literally just worthless, meaningless islands in the middle of a river. Like, they have actual no value. At this point, I'm sure they probably just give them up. But how in the world, like the sanctions are a big thing because they have to sell their goods to someone, and China is the only buyer right now, the major one. So they're clearly going to start moving towards them. But what in the world?
Here's another thing. I see that I think John or someone in the live chat had mentioned this. Why doesn't the U.S. just simply try to start cutting off China economically? Here's the problem with that. The U.S. and China are so economically intertwined that doing that, it's basically a parasitic relationship. We're going to end up killing the host country, ourselves in the United States, if we try to do that to China, because we're going to hurt them as bad as we're hurting ourselves if we did that. So, China has played this kind of brilliantly, if I'm being perfectly honest here. The way they've played this has been very elaborate, and we're just now seeing how deep this web really goes and how intertwined our enemies are with our country. And now if we even want to try to hurt China, we really can't, because we're going to hurt our own economy in a really bad way. And we can't just overnight say, oh, let's bring everything back to the United States. Things don't happen that quick. For example, look at TSMC in Taiwan. We're trying to get the silicone chips made here in the U.S. but it's going to take a long time to build that factory and actually have it operational. So until that's actually finished, we're at the mercy of China deciding not to invade Taiwan, or at least holding off for a little while. So it's a deep web right here, and honestly, this is a hell of a problem to figure out.
Well, the thing is a lot of people are saying, let's cut China off. We've kind of already been doing that, and China's kind of already been doing that over about the past 6 to 7 years. If a lot of y'all notice, a lot of your tags on your shirts, or really any of your products, don't really say made in China as much as they used to anymore. A lot of them will say stuff like made in Vietnam, or made in Laos, or made in Mexico, or something along those lines, because like I was saying a moment ago, China is starting to change and rapidly shift from being an industrial economy to being a service-based economy, a lot like the United States. The Chinese already have laid out in their plenums that is the plan. Every single 5 years, they lay out a brand new 5-year plan where they continue to try and work and strive to create pretty much a facsimile of the U.S. economy as it exists today, and they plan on having that done by 2049. And so going off of that, we know that the Chinese are really not going to be that affected well, they would be pretty affected right now still if we ended up completely cutting off their goods from being shipped into America. Problem is, we're then at a hundreds of billions dollar deficit in goods that just don't exist in America anymore. And then where do we get them from? It's not like you can just ramp Mexico up to pump more goods out, because that's actually our largest trade partner right now is Mexico, not China. You just can't ramp them up to pump out more goods like that, because they don't have the factories and they don't have the viable workforce at this point that has been trained and is working in those factories to be able to produce hundreds of billions of dollars of goods that we would be in a deficit in. Really, the only thing we can do at this moment is buy time and wait for all of those industries that are currently inside of China to move to other countries elsewhere, either in Southeast Asia or here in Central America. But then at the same time, that doesn't really do anything to China either, because the Chinese end up getting what they want. They end up turning into a service-based economy, which they're already in the transition of doing right now, and it didn't really hurt them at all either. And so it's a very interesting kind of a conundrum to be in at the moment. And it's one that I gotta say, while I am pro-Western through and through, the Chinese have played this quite well. The Chinese are usually fairly long-term thinkers, especially as far as their government is concerned, and it has to do a lot with Chinese philosophy and everything. They generally like to be very slow and methodical with their process, and so while they don't get say instant gratification on a governmental level over a generation, they will achieve what they were aiming to get. That's kind of how the Chinese government works, and that's why they're not saying China is going to be a successful economy in 5 to 10 years. They're saying that China is going to be a successful economy by 2049, which is a pretty good length down the track. It's about 15 to 17 years away at this point.
Also interesting. Also, another interesting thing as well is y'all will all know that China is having some severe economic problems domestically. Like they're having some collapse of certain industries and things like that, especially in their real estate industry. They're having some very major problems right now. They're having basically on the verge of an economic collapse domestically, that is. But in foreign policy, though, China is actually in the driver's seat because, for example, the United States relies on their goods, so obviously there's a huge relationship there. China sort of holds the cards to a sense in that relationship. And also with Russia, China holds the cards as well because Russia has nowhere else to turn to. So right now, Russia and the U.S. are kind of in China's pocket, at least economically, in this whole situation, which is not a good place for us to be as the United States. And honestly, I'm not sure how to get out of it right this second. I'm kind of at a loss, kind of like the enforcer is. He has some ideas, but I'm not sure if any of them are a like surefire solution. So that will be a problem that we're going to solve probably within the next year or so.
I don't really know how we're going to solve it. Really, the only thing I could think of to try and solve it is to pretty much deny China the ability to continue to grow their One Belt, One Road programs in East Africa, in the Middle East, and also within Central Asia. That's maybe the only thing that we could do at this point to really screw them over. But then then still, we have the problem that the United States, at least on a governmental level, considers East Africa to be an insignificant area. We're kind of sitting on our ass in the Middle East currently. We're not really doing a lot to protect our interests there and make sure that everyone would view the United States as a strong partner currently. So a lot of countries may be throwing the idea up in the air that maybe stronger economic ties with the Chinese would be favorable in the future, trying to, really be friendly with all sides instead of being pro-Western and only on one side. And then in Central Asia, it's either divvied up amongst countries like Iran, which, you know, are pretty rough countries, or the former Soviet Union, which is largely still within a Russian sphere, although most of those countries are completely insignificant. But going off of that, it's really hard to even imagine a way that we could really try and combat the Chinese at this point and really hit them where it hurts. There's a way to do it. If there is a will, there is a way, and we can find a way to hit them where it hurts. It's just that it's going to be fairly difficult to try and pull that off. And a lot of people are going to say this, because I heard Mandy say this earlier, why don't we just bring the industry back to America? The industry will not return to America. We actually still are the second largest manufacturing nation in the world, or let me actually go get you all the chart on that. Largest manufacturing countries. And let me go get this really quickly. Here we go. Here's the graph I'm looking for. So this is in 2019. The United States is still second. Well, the Chinese beat us out almost by a factor of 2, but the United States is still the second largest manufacturing nation in the world. It beats Japan, Germany, India, South Korea, Italy, France, the UK, and Indonesia. That is according to 2019's figures. I don't have the current figures as they are today. Well, actually, we might, because this is from 2023. Let me see what we got here. So China has actually dropped by a couple of fractions of a percentile. So that is fairly interesting to see. Once again, showing, at least on a small level for all of y'all, that China is starting to move from a manufacturing economy to a service economy. It's a minor change, but it is starting to decrease in percentage of global manufacturing output. But that's something really important to look at and talk about, is this kind of a manufacturing output. America still is a very large industrial country, but the reason why China grew their manufacturing output to be so large and to make up almost a third of the world's output is because they were willing to provide incredibly cheap and inexpensive labor. Of course, at the cost of the workers, the working conditions over there are hell on earth, and a lot of people try and jump off the roofs and stuff because it's so bad. But the fact of the matter is that that is what a lot of people want. Like that's kind of that's kind of a necessary evil of the world. Because do y'all want to spend $30 for a single T-shirt? Probably not. And if you don't want to spend $30 for a single T-shirt, that means that some guy in China, about 10 or 20 years ago, was sitting inside of a factory for about 12 to 14 hours a day, and he was sitting there getting paid about equivalent to 5 to 7 cents an hour to make T-shirts. And it made the cost of those T-shirts so cheap that you could end up buying 20 of them in a store in a pack for like $7. And that's what is the biggest thing. The driving factor of the world's economy is trying to make goods as cheap as possible. And America simply cannot be competitive in that realm.
Also, keep in mind as well that if you throw tariffs on Chinese goods coming into the United States, while that will, that will punish China to an extent, ultimately, it's the American people that end up paying the difference on that. And that'll also hurt people as well. So while it hurts China, it also hurts us at the same time. So once again, it's another conundrum.
It really is. And also I see a lot of people saying, I would rather buy something more expensive from America than something less expensive from a foreign country. That would be nice if that was the majority opinion, but the reality is that consumers will always pick the cheapest product available in the largest numbers. That is always how it's worked. And that's why the United States was the largest industrial power of the world back about 70 years ago and up until about 30 years ago, or really 40 years ago, is because America was actually that country. We produced the largest amount of stuff, the cheapest, and it went everywhere. I mean, everyone in the world had some kind of an American product somewhere inside of their country, and then the Americans themselves were buying up these American-made products in mass because they were the cheapest thing available at the time. But things have changed, and that's not the reality anymore, and that's kind of the world we have to live in. So then we have to find out a way what countries are friendly with us that we would like to have that cheap, where that cheap, inexpensive labor could live that will give us the goods we want. That's really the fact of the matter. And I know a lot of people don't really like to hear it that way because it makes it sound like Americans are shrewd and they don't care about other people around the world. But that's really the reality of everyone in the world. They want cheap stuff. And so With that in mind, Mexico is, of course, an incredibly good option. It's not like they're going to be going commie anytime soon, or Chinese for that matter, because they literally border the United States. So if anyone's going to have a larger amount of diplomatic sway on the Mexicans, it's going to be America, just by geographic distinction alone. It could also be Southeastern Asian countries, because a lot of them are having border disputes with the Chinese on land and at sea, and for that reason, they are not as friendly to the Chinese as one would think. And so a nation like Vietnam actually isn't that bad of a bet for an industrial manufacturing base, because they're not going to be going Chinese anytime soon, although they are commie. I will say that. Other countries like Laos, Cambodia, and also India, for that matter, are also really good bets as well, because a lot of people say India is a part of BRICS, sure, but they're all beating to each other to death with canes up in the Himalayas right now, because China claims a part of the Kashmir, so does India, and so they're going to beat each other to death with sticks to try and figure out who's going to get that land. If you think that that's some kind of a joke, really quickly to clarify that, because someone's going to go, are you saying that they're beating each other with sticks because you don't like them? No. The thing is that there's an actual treaty that's been in place since the 60s and between India and China that forbids their border guards from using weapons on each other, because they're so scared that the tensions are so high that it'll break out into a full-on war if they had weapons. And so they actually go up there and beat each other to death with clubs and sticks. I'm not kidding. You can go pull up the videos. But beyond that, this is something that we have to consider in the future, is where in the world is the industrial basis going to go that produces these cheap goods? It can't be America, so who is it? And I would say generally Mexico is my biggest bet, and then Southeast Asia and the Indian subcontinent would be my next best bet beyond Mexico. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. It's a really bizarre thing to have to talk about at this point. It's happening really quickly as far as Russian-Chinese relations are going. But moving on from that, and all the way over into Finland, we have also seen that NATO isn't really sitting idly by against the Russian Federation. And this may also be a reason why the Russians are running to Big Papa China and what's up Beijing to try and get a little bit of protection. Because it sounds as though a multinational force is now moving into Finland and getting incredibly close to the Russian border in this area. According to Visegrad24, Swedish media reports that Sweden will send troops to a multinational NATO battle group that is going to be deployed in Finland. And the NATO forward land forces in Finland will be stationed in the northern region of Finland called Lapland. And this is a very interesting thing as well. They're not going to be down here near St. Petersburg. They're actually going to be up in the Lapland. And now a lot of people are probably think that there's probably a lot of laps up there. And I guess you would be lapping up that joke if it was a good one. But all jokes aside, the Lapland is a very interesting place because it's wildly close to Murmansk, which is a fairly large Russian naval port, and it also may be in distance to try and threaten, although very unlikely, Arkhangelsk, which is also a smaller Russian naval port that is used by the Russian Navy. And so it's very interesting to see that NATO is actually starting to use the new territories that are kind of in their possession at this point inside of Finland and Sweden, and we're now starting to move multinational forces into areas that can possibly threaten the Russian Federation going on into the future. Of course, this area is also a major one because if a war actually did start, a shooting war in between the West and Russia could probably count on the Chinese for some sort of physical support. And if that is the case, pretty much every single port around the Russian Federation, St. Petersburg, the port of Rostov-on-Don, Novorossiysk, Sevastopol, which is currently under Russian control, and also the port of Vladivostok would probably be inaccessible by most maritime shipping, as NATO blockades would largely shut those off, or really US blockades within the area of the Pacific. That means that if the Russians really wanted some goods and they wanted to get them into the Russian Federation, it's either going to be going over land by the Trans-Siberian Railway all the way through Russia, or they will have to take a ship, somehow run the blockades near Japan, mostly in Taiwan, set up by the United States Navy, and then make their way all the way up and around to Murmansk. And that even is a very dangerous trip on its own. Murmansk would probably be fairly unusable, but it would still be the Russians' best hope if they tried to get any shipping done. That means that if NATO has a large multinational force in this area, they could try and close off this area just east of the Lapland and pretty much cut the Russians off from their only slightly usable port in that shooting war. So that is a fairly good thing to see, and once again showing a good strategic deterrent for the Russians to try and avoid an open conventional war with NATO. It would most likely end up going poorly, not just for the areas of the Lapland and also the Kola Peninsula where Murmansk is at, but also just in the plains of Eastern Europe as a whole. NATO forces would most likely do exceedingly well in that area, and NATO technology is by far much better than any kind of technology that the Russian Federation currently possesses at this point. But beyond that, loads of people have been talking about this NATO action today of a multinational force made up of NATO forces moving to the border in the Lapland and once again trying to create another strategic deterrent against the Russian Federation. Loads of people are putting in their thoughts on this, and a lot of people are actually saying it's a very wise deterrent, and once again making it seem that a conventional war would go bad quickly for the Russian Federation. Others are saying that it's escalatory and not wise by NATO, they should back off. Others are saying that it's fair game and they're a little indifferent, and some are saying that they're unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people really thinking about this? Do they think that this is a wise action by NATO, or do they think that it's a little bit too much? And what are your thoughts on it as well?
So 78% of the audience said it's a wise deterrent to Russia, while 13% said it's fair game, but I'm indifferent. And 5% said that's escalatory and not wise by NATO. And on this one, I would say it's honestly fair game because Russia has been doing a ton of different things to provoke NATO ever since we've been funding the Ukrainians in their fight against Russia. So to me, I think it's a very wise deterrent to send this multi-nation battle group there. And one thing I'm curious about, though, is how large really is this battle group, because we're really not told exact specifics about it. We were told by Sweden that they're sending their own troops to this battle group as well. So we're not really sure exactly what the fine-tuned details are, but overall, I like the idea, and I think it's very wise. But Enforcer, what say you?
If I had to take an assumption at this multinational force, I would say that the brigade is most likely a very safe bet to assume. A brigade in most reasonable forms, we're talking about a combined arms brigade here, by the way, is usually made up of around 12 to 14 battalions, usually a couple of combined arms battalions that are actually meant for the fighting, and then a great deal of support battalions that help those actual combined arms battalions to be able to carry on the fight to the enemy. So going off of that, I would say maybe a brigade. I would say it would be really bizarre if it was anything larger than a brigade, like say a division made up of multiple brigades that are a multinational force, because I feel like the cohesion of a multinational division probably would end up getting a little bit tough to pull off, especially if you're just ripping battalions out of armed forces of multiple different countries and then just smacking them into some kind of a standardized NATO brigade template. That would probably get really complicated to deal with really quickly. So I feel like it most likely would be a brigade. And so I'm going to stay on that for now. We'll probably get an actual size later in some kind of a publication, and they'll tell us that it was a brigade or several brigades or maybe a division. But still, beyond that, I would say that this is a very wise deterrent. It is, once again, making sure to put the Russians in a disadvantageous position in the outbreak of a conventional war, and this will encourage them not to get into a conventional war because they will be on the back foot pretty quickly after that war began. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, Matthew, before we move on from that, I was just thinking when I started talking about the brigade deal and then I started talking about combined arms battalions and support units and everything, I was thinking about that one thing that we watched last night, Matthew, where that guy said, the Russians keep throwing bodies at the Ukrainians. And I was like, this is a much more in-depth analysis than what that guy was giving the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
definitely, man. Way more in-depth, I would say.
Oh, man, dude. I wish we could talk about that in a little bit more detail because it hit me when I was saying all that. That's why I went, and yeah, because I was thinking about that, I was like, dude, this is really, really in-depth compared to what you're getting on other channels, dude. Like, I was like, yeah, that's maybe a little bit too much. Usually I try and tone things down with that because there's a lot to be said about every single part of that, the brigade, the battalions, and then the companies and the battalions, and then the actual soldiers in those units, the equipment they have and all that, and then the vehicles. It's a whole thing to talk about because it all affects how they fight a little bit. But anyways, moving on from that, I would say that this is a very good and a very effective deterrent. But moving on from that, and out of the area of Finland, we have also been able to hear that within the Russian Federation, the Russians have been under a little bit of an attack, in the city of Kursk. We were able to see that the Ukrainian drones ended up slamming down to the city of Kursk overnight. Here's the clip.
Где? Вон. Летит он. Между домов пролетит. О!
Dang.
Is that the wind or is that people screaming?
I don't know. They're very
Oh, never
interesting.
mind. Definitely screaming or something going on.
Probably screaming. But here's another clip of the attack. We can actually hear the drone. Sounds like a motorcycle or a ricer, one or the other. Oh!
Damn.
Blid.
That thing was chock full of explosives, I would say. A big boom.
I'd quite say, man, the way you said I'd say, it was like a British version, like, I'd say quite a large amount of explosives. But I would have to agree.
My.
That was a freaking big explosion right there. But it is showing that the city of Kursk is once again under attack. Ukrainian drone forces are attempting to drive home the damage to the Russian Federation's armed forces before they can even enter the special military operation, as the Russians are calling it, in Ukraine. And we can see that that is once again happening in Kursk. We don't know what was targeted and what was damaged at this point. This attack happened about an hour or two before we went live. So we are still trying to gather some information about the damage that may have been brought to Kursk and if it affected any military forces within that area. But still, very interesting to see, and good to know that the Ukrainians are continuing to make their way through Russian air defense and target and destroy Russian military equipment even inside of the Russian Federation. Moving on from that, and on up into the area of Kyiv for a brief moment, we were actually able to hear that some pro-Russian saboteurs were arrested. They detained them near Kyiv. And I will just read y'all what we have here to make sure that we don't get anything messed up. But police in Kyiv have detained 2 perpetrators of ordered sabotage attacks. These were ordered up like Little Caesar's Pizza. On the orders of the Russian security services, the attackers committed a series of arson attacks, including setting fire to a military officer's car. That's just a little bit of cheeky banner right there. And setting fire to a relay box on the railroad, which is actually a very serious thing. I'll explain why. The Russians paid them $1,200 for a video confirming the sabotage. The arsonists now face up to 15 years in a Ukrainian prison. Now, the reason why the whole military officer's car thing is not really that big of a deal, I mean, it's a military officer's car. You know, it's not really like that's changing the war effort to burn one of those down. But burning down a relay box on the side of a railroad, that's actually a really big thing. Here is why. Let me show you all a railroad in Kyiv. Here is a railroad in Kyiv. This is actually most likely for passengers. This is going into central Kyiv. Usually freight trains terminate further out of the city because it doesn't really make a lot of sense to move a load of freight through the center of the city unless if you're trying to get from one area of Ukraine to the next and you have to just transit through. But beyond that, if we were to look at any part of this line, you'll see some tracks. And these tracks are actually divvied up a lot like a city street is, and they have red lights, but on a railroad's route, those are called signals, and the signals are operated by a central office somewhere in the local area. They have a giant board. Let me see if I can actually show you all this. A railway controller. Let me see if I can show you all a picture of this. Let's see here. Railway control room. Maybe if I pull that up, it'll get us a better example. So, this is a fairly good one. This is actually from some Indian railways, but I'm trying to see if I can get y'all a better one here. Dang, it's tough to find one that's really good. Okay, so here we go. This is a stock photo of a railway control room, but this is kind of what they look like. It shows all of the lines. It also shows all of the rail yards as well. And from this one office here, a railroad or a railway company, which in Ukraine is state-run, is able to manage and operate the entire railroad from this office. And they're able to tell trains if the next area of pretty much the railroad is a green light and they can drive into that area or whether they can't. That's what that's kind of how the railroad works on a very, very simplified level. But for them to be able to relay these kinds of signals and information through different areas of the route, they require these little signal boxes right here that are scattered along the route and are usually close to some signals and also close to switches as well. Because another thing that I forgot to mention is not only do these railway control rooms control all of the signals along a route, they also control a decent amount of switches on a route and are able to change the direction of travel for trains, moving them from one track to the next and a whole bunch of other stuff like that. These little signal boxes like these actually do all of that for a specific area of the rails. And if someone came up to one of these signal boxes, busted into it, and then threw a Molotov on it, they are burning all of the components inside that signal box that operate the signals in this area, and also all of the switches as well. And that means, in the end, this entire area has to be shut down, and trains are not able to operate at normal capacity or at normal speeds, and they're also making the logistics of railroad operations a lot more difficult, and until they replace this signal box. And that can end up getting fairly costly if these signal boxes keep on getting hit and burned over and over and over. That's why in the Russian Federation, when the Atesh unit knocks out a signal box, we don't really talk about it anymore because a lot of people don't know the impact of something like that, but the impact is actually very significant and ends up impacting railway logistics quite heavily. In fact, in the United States, railway logistics is such a concern that trespassing on any kind of railroad property like a rail yard, I believe at this point, is a felony. And it can be charged with a minimum sentence of up to 1 year and 1 day in prison. And that is something that is incredibly interesting. It's similar like that in many other countries as well. It kind of depends. But still giving an idea of the severity of this kind of sabotage. And still very good to see that the Ukrainian police were able to find these people and hopefully hold them accountable for the sabotage that they have conducted. But moving on from that, and that interesting little bit of news, I hope that taught you all a little bit about how a railway works. But moving on from that and into our next bit, we also got to see a Ukrainian Gepard in the wild near to the Kyiv air defense perimeter. And they got that epic rock music playing right here.
Oh man, look at that old style like radar looking thing right there. That's impressive.
Man, that old German radar. Geschlägt mal like when we can see the movie their Gepard around. Man, remember when they were really worried that they weren't going to find ammo for this thing anymore because it uses like an obsolete 35mm Oerlikon round that the Germans didn't manufacture anymore and only the Swiss did?
But yet they got tons of it. Is that right?
Yeah, apparently they have a limited number of the stuff now, so they just get to use the Gepard however and wherever they want. And we can see them using it right there. I mean, I'd be damned. Also, that's just saw someone bring up something interesting in the chat. They said railway police. There actually are railway police in America. They're hardly known about. Let me see if I can actually find y'all railway police. Because they're actually really cool. Let's see here. I want to find the ones in America. Where are the American ones? Dude, they had a section for the People's Republic of China. It's like, dude, it's a railway police in the PRC. You get near a railroad, you just get capped like instantly. No hesitation. But let me see here. Let's see, National Detective Agency. That's not what we want. We don't want the Pinkertons, damn it. We want these other people. Let's see here. Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers. I'd be danged. Let's see. Okay, so really quickly to put this out there, just for y'all to know, there are railroad police agencies nowadays, but most of them are participants of the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. So I can't get exact names or show y'all specific pictures of railway police, but they are out there and they do exist, which is really interesting to hear about and know about. But anyways, moving on from that, it is now time for us to move on into our location unknowns. We actually have some really interesting ones. But before we do that, we have heard that Ukrainian Forces Commander Oleksandr Syrsky has stated that the Kerch Bridge is scheduled for destruction, and that the Ukrainians do plan on wiping out the Kerch Bridge. And a lot of people are wondering, when will that happen? It's not a matter of is, a matter of when. And a lot of people are saying that it'll happen in weeks. Others are saying,
no, we got the lag. The lag is back.
Oh, the worms! The worms! Hopefully it's not going to last too long. Oh, man, it is lasting. Oh, my goodness.
Also, I see we got some Russian bots flooding in while the lag's happening. I don't know if there's any correlation.
The worms! The worms! Oh, my goodness. Oh, man.
Are we back yet?
I think we are. Are we? Can you hear me? Can you?
Yeah, I've heard you fine the whole time. It's just been the YouTube connection.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I think we're back. But, Matthew, so many people were talking about this Kerch Bridge and whether it'll be blown up soon or not. Tell me, are people thinking, will it blow up or will it not? What are they thinking? What are you thinking?
So the question here is, will the Kerch Bridge be destroyed soon? Now that we've heard Sersky say that it will be, 57% said it will happen within weeks, while 23% said it'll happen within months, and 9% said it's simply just hype talk and propaganda talk. And on this one, since the Kerch Bridge has become a logistics route once again for the Russians, it has become a military target once more. And while the Ukrainians had said before that they're no longer really looking to target the Kerch, now that it's once again being used to move equipment by the Russians, it will be destroyed in the near future, in my opinion. But the question is, will it happen in months or weeks? Me personally, I think it'll probably happen in months. It's probably not going to happen in the next few weeks, would be my guess. That would be a little too soon, close to the announcement of that. So it'll probably happen sometime randomly within the next few months. So I'm with the 23%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I would say it may happen in months. I don't think it's going to happen in weeks. That's just too short of a span of time, and that would pretty much mean that statement is giving the Russians head notice, or heads up notice, not head notice. That's like the head office. But beyond that, I would say it will most likely happen within months. I don't think it's going to be happening wildly soon, but it is going to happen. Also, Matthew, while you were talking, I did finally find it, and I'm happy to have found it. I wish I had found this sooner. There are railroad police, and we have some here in the South for CSX.
Oh, look at that. Some CSX Railroad Police. That's an interesting looking badge right there, by the way. It looks presidential almost.
Yeah, it does. And there's a picture of some CSX railroad police. Here it is with the badge on the side, well, kind of like the emblem on the side of their sleeve. Like, there are actual railway police. Like, I wonder, does Union Pacific, I'm very interested now in this, Union Pacific Railroad Police, well, I'd be damned, they have some too. Like, look at that. I guess every company has railroad police.
What the hell? Union Pacific with a, like, what the hell is this?
Dude,
I'd be curious to know how they actually have legalities of this. Like, how do the railroad police get, like, police powers? Are they, like, do they operate like normal police? Or are they just, like, for the railroad? Or, like, what is it, I wonder?
I think
that'd be a hell of a rabbit hole.
I think they have some sort of limited jurisdiction specifically for the railroads. But, dude, imagine being like al-Baghdadi and getting capped by Union Pacific. Like, imagine that, dude.
The unions are for the American worker.
Dude, like, dude, imagine this though, man. Imagine if the Houthis ended up, I don't know, eventually derailing a Union Pacific train, and Union Pacific calls in a Moab on Al-Qaeda. Like, just imagine, man. They'd be like, the trains always run on time, bitch, and then drop a bomb on them. That'd be crazy to see. But, you know, Matthew, that would actually be a pretty cool video to go into. Like, use this picture, if we can, for a thumbnail, and be like, the secret railroad police or something like that, because no one knows about railroad police. Like, that's something that no one would have a clue about. But that would be an incredibly cool video to talk about. Railroad police. Like, what do they do? What is their point? What is their purpose in life? It would be pretty cool.
That could be pretty neat, man. Maybe a good deep rabbit hole.
Maybe so, maybe so. But anyways, with that, enough about the railway police. It is time for us to move on into some location unknowns. But before we do, we actually have a couple of interesting questions tonight, and we want to make sure to get to them before we get on into the remainder of this news. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat segment of the night, we have a super chat from Purple Gerbil, the longtime channel legend, and thank you very much, Purple Gerbil, for that $50 support, and we appreciate it very much. He said, any more news about the Russian and Chinese bombers being intercepted off Alaska? And he said also, since you've already covered it at length, take a live chat question instead.
Well, thank you so much for the support, Purple Gerbil, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope we were able to answer that incredibly well. It's kind of a part of the normal news circuit. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again. And we will make sure to take a live chat in your honor. And so what do we got, Matthew, in honor of Purple Gerbil?
So this live chat question right here is going to go to Rob Eisman, who's also a legend, by the way.
Hey!
He says, does China have computer chip manufacturing technology equal to Taiwan in-house? And no, they do not.
Really, no one does. That's kind of the special thing about Taiwan that makes them so special, is that no one actually has a semiconductor production ability on par with Taiwan. Taiwan is really one in itself out there with TSMC. So China doesn't have that. America doesn't have that. We're trying to get that, actually. We're trying to transfer their industrial manufacturing facilities here to the United States. And I believe one of them is being built in Texas, if I'm correct.
Arizona, I think.
Yeah, Arizona, and I think there was also one in Texas. I'm not really sure on that, though. Don't quote me on that. But we are trying to move that industrial, that manufacturing ability to America. But the Chinese really want to have it. It has such a major playing factor in the modern world's economy to be in charge of something involved in information technology. And that is a very big thing to be able to produce semiconductors and wafer chips like TSMC can. And so the answer to that is no, they can. And that's why Taiwan is such a big deal strategically for the entire world, is because most of the semiconductors come out of Taiwan. I think it's more than half of the world's semiconductors come out of Taiwan alone. And what is crazy about that, y'all, is that I actually went and got a brand new 2 terabyte SSD recently, and I was installing it on my computer. And what is crazy, Matthew, is that on the actual SSD, it says made in Taiwan. Like, everything that has to do with computers is largely made in Taiwan. But
Yeah, that's impressive. But that's specifically that I think it's like 3 nanometer like chip process is made right there at TSMC. I pulled it up because I saw some people saying Texas and I saw someone saying Arizona. It appears to be Phoenix, Arizona, where the really large TSMC factory is being built that'll make those chips that are being made on the island of Taiwan right now. So it's I think it's a long way off though. It's not going to be like next year or something. I think it's got a couple of years left on it.
I think so. Also, one thing I gotta say, Matthew, is Phoenix, like, couldn't they have picked a better spot? Like, it is wildly hot in Phoenix. Like, it is so freaking hot down there. People die from heat stroke just walking around out there.
Man, it's like it's heat stroke down here in the south too. It's not just hot there. I think it's gotten up to like 120 or something like that in Phoenix though. So it's not quite as hot here in Alabama, but that's some bad heat. That dry heat too.
Man, it's dry. Oh, that carp. Oh, that carp. But beyond that, dude, the carp sizzles out here in the heat near Phoenix, man. Like, that carp pops out of the water, you hear as soon as it hops out, it's like, damn, that thing's cooking already. Like, it's like, get that thing back in some water. But then they don't even have water anymore. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, that live chat. And thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, Purple Cherble. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And our second super chat is going to go to K-Dub Janky, also another channel legend. And he puts in a $50 donation, and huge shout out to you, K-Dub, for that support. He said, I usually have a history rabbit hole to dive into, but tonight I will just say that your broadcast is sagacious and prescient and clear thought and evidence-based. I never miss an episode, and thanks for all the diligence in the project.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for your magic words, magic man. Like, I don't know what prescient or let's see sagacious means, but I'm gonna take that as incredibly well things and incredibly good words. We just don't use words like that anymore in the modern day, but I think we do. I think we need to be a little bit more of a boost. If that's how you say it, but still, thank you greatly for the support, and thank you for having some kind things to say. Also, the history rabbit holes are my favorite. I don't know how many of y'all like them. Let me know in the chat if y'all like them or not. I would be very interested to see how many of y'all dislike them or how many of y'all like them. But I always love doing them because I always have, like, this thing I'll say. And Matthew will tell you this is just how I work normally. I'll say something like, forks are pretty cool. And then I'll be like, the first fork. Like, and I'll go through, like, the history of the fork. Because I always find things like that interesting. I always like to know how something began and how it got to where it is today. I always find that to be really interesting. And also, I guess by doing that, it may have helped me to be able to recognize some patterns out there that exist in the world with how things work and how it's always worked in the past. And I kind of apply that to how Russian-Chinese relations work, that kind of stuff. But I always find it to be very fun to talk about historical rabbit holes. It's not exactly Ukraine related every time, and I always see someone in the chat say, news, when I'm going through a rabbit hole, which always makes me feel a little rushed. But still, I love doing them. I absolutely love them. And it seems like a lot of y'all absolutely love the rabbit holes. I'm seeing no one disliking the rabbit holes currently. I'm sure that will now be undone by someone. They'll be like, just get to the news. But beyond that, still, thank you so much once again for the support, KW Janky. Thank you for enjoying the historical rabbit holes. I love doing them when we have enough time on air. And thank you so much once again for support. So if anyone, because the thing is that I can't really go into historical rabbit holes too much on my own, because then I'm going to start driving people crazy. So usually I get to go into historical rabbit holes when it might pertain to the news, or when people super chat them or live chat them and then ask about a specific historical rabbit hole, and then I get to go through one. So I hope that there are some rabbit holes that we get to go through tonight, either in the live chat or in the super chats. But still, thank you so much once again for support, KW Janky. I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much for enjoying all of our diligence in this. We love doing this. I wouldn't be anywhere else. And we have a very, very special kind of a place we fill currently in covering this kind of news. We are the leading voice on Ukraine pretty much out there, except for one other channel. We have once again taken the mantle and are running with it, and we're really happy to be in that kind of position, and we're so happy to know that people trust us and like us enough to be able to come here and pick us as their primary source of news on this war. I have to say this though, like as a side note, you know, usually we always hear from our adversaries or competitors, whatever you want to call them, that the enforcer has no idea what he's talking about. That's actually been said to us in the past off air, and that is something that I've always found to be annoying to hear and really stupid, but I've never really cared enough to delve into what these people say on their own shows or their own videos to really know if they are actually out doing instant analysis or not. But last night, Matthew and me were mogging on some people off air once the stream was over, and we pulled up someone's video. Matthew knows who I'm talking about. And it was the most generic and it was like the most stuck-up presentation of the most generic and unintelligent drivel I've ever heard. And that person should quit talking about the war and go talk about something they actually know about. Like, I don't know how in the world, like, they started off, "Welcome back, everyone. It's time to talk about the news. The Russians are throwing bodies at Ukraine and the Ukrainians are fighting back." And I'm like, that's it? Like, you pretty much just explained every day in the war. Like, that's what happens every day. What's the specifics? You know, like, what in the world happened? And then they started talking about, things are looking better or things are looking worse. It's like, okay, thank you for the general statement, but like, how? Like, can you explain that a little bit more? And they wouldn't. And then I found out in that one moment, because I never cared to watch any of those videos from this one person. I found out that their analysis is BS. Like, they don't really know what they're talking about. They just repeat whatever they think sounds good. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. I don't know if they're all like that, because I don't really care to watch any of their videos. But that in that own right there led me to laugh my ass off. Like, I'm not kidding. I mean, I had to tell you, I was laughing at that, because I was like, wait a minute, we go into analysis of, like, battalions, brigades, the amount of forces in an area, their possible actions that they'll take based off of the terrain and their available manpower and equipment. And this person wanted to say that I didn't know what I was talking about, and they don't even know what the hell a brigade or a battalion is. They just know that there's armies there. It's like, that in its own place. I was like, that person doesn't know what they're talking about. They shouldn't be covering the war. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. I didn't mean to go down that rabbit hole, but I had to, because I saw that last night. I laughed at it, and I was like, I cannot go without making a comment on that. But anyways, with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the remainder of the news for tonight. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and the last super chat of the first segment right here goes to John Garner, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, John, for that support as well. He says, happy belated birthday to you, Matt, and thank you very much, John. That was a good birthday a couple of days ago, but thank you very much for that happy belated birthday. He says, may you and us have many more, and I hope so as well, and huge shout out to you, John, for wishing me a happy birthday as well. I appreciate that a lot, and also, thanks for helping to keep us running as well with that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, huge thank you so much for the support, John Garner. And thank you for wishing Matthew a happy belated birthday. Matthew's birthday was this Monday. It's now Wednesday our time, but we are still happy to hear happy birthday wishes for Matthew. And I hope that he is going to have many more, because he does incredibly well with birthdays. I mean, you know, he's a star at his birthday. You know, like he has the cards, he reads the cards, he eats the cookie, he leaves. It's like a one-hit wonder right there. It's impressive stuff. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can, of course. And with that, we are now going to be moving on into the rest of the news that we have tonight. And we have a good amount of it still to cover. Moving on into our location unknowns, we got to see that a Ukrainian soldier was using a FAMAS felon with a Trigicon ACOG on it. I was really impressed with that because the FAMAS is a pretty interesting bullpup on its own. It's French made and was generally the service rival of France up until recently. Now they're replacing it with the H&K 416. But this one's really neat because it's a really souped up FAMAS as far as a FAMAS goes, and the guy's also got an ACOG on it, and I'm really a big fan of the ACOG. So pretty neat to see this rare piece in the Ukrainian training ground. But moving on from that, we also got to see a little interesting graph that someone has been able to compile showing the amount of Russian tanks lost per month since really the beginning of the war up until the present day. And you know something that is very interesting to see, Matthew, is that here in just the past few months alone, T-62s are skyrocketing in the numbers lost because there's so many more of them present on the front lines now, really than any other part of the war, that they are starting to rapidly become one of the largest groups of losses in the armored section that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis at this point.
Yeah, it looks like actually, let's see, the yellow one's a T-72. They're all actually going up. So yeah, that T-62 is the most rapid one, but that's crazy. Like all the losses are going up consistently.
Well, actually, you would think, man, you would think that they're going up, but what they're actually doing is that every other category is shrinking, because these graphs are really like misleading because it looks like they're all going up, but they're going up because the T-62s are pushing all of them higher. Because like, look at this, like in June of 2024, the T-72s made up 33% of all armor losses. In July of 2024, they only make up 30.6%. So they've actually decreased in size by about 2.5%, while the T-62s have increased by an entire 10% in the loss factor.
Huh, that's interesting. I've never been good at graphs, but I'm telling you what, this one right here is not good design. If that's what's going shrinking or going up or down or whatever, that's not a good one.
Yeah, these graphs are confusing as hell, no lie. Like, it's like, what the hell do they mean? Because it does look like everything's going up at the end, but then you read the graph and it's and pretty much everything is actually decreasing except for the T-62s. They're the only thing that is increasing. Also, huge shout out to the few 280s that got blown up during like the very early part of this year. They pretty much were not getting destroyed at any other part in the war. They whipped them out. They pretty much lost most, if not all of them that they had, and then they went and disappeared again. But still, nice to see. I mean, you know, you can't really complain about that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? But moving on from that and on to our next bit of location unknown news, we also got to see a couple of Ukrainian Boldanas passing by the Ukrainian infantry. Oh, and there's that same music that we've heard for 890 days. Get a new track, like please. But we can see the Budana right there. Look at that thing. It is just gorgeous. What a cool Budana on that Tatra chassis. We love it.
A very fine looking truck there. Very well made. You won't see the Russian ones made like this.
No, you just won't. It simply is not. But that is the end of that clip, and what a sight. I gotta say, love to see the Bodanas out there doing their thing. Meanwhile, we got to see, once again, more Russians on electric scooters. They love these things, apparently. I don't know what's up with the Russians liking electric scooters, but they love these things. They just gobble them up. Like, I'm not really a big fan of them. I had one as a kid. It was a Razor. I didn't really like it that much, and so we got rid of it. But apparently they really like it.
He kind of go hard though. Like he's kind of sitting down low. He's got the handlebars up high. He's got the bandana on. I mean, what's he trying to be, a bandit out here?
Hold up, wait a minute. You said it. Now we got to do it, man. Hang on. hang on. We're about to get it. There we go. A blank canvas for our Canva. And we just go up here to edit image. Wait, we just put a filter on this thing, right? Like a little black and white filter. A little black and white filter never hurt anyone. Wait, was it back there? No. That was Nordic. We need that black and white. Come on. Come on, we gotta have... Okay, just see all. That ought to be quicker. Ah, there we go. And now you know what I'm about to do, Matthew.
Thug life.
We gotta get that parental advisory sticker. Hang on. Dang it! Okay, that one. Hang on. Hang on.
Oh
Let me try.
no.
Let me try another one. Let me try another one. Yeah! There we go. All right.
Yeah, look at that. Except here's the plot twist, though. You're not putting the parental advisory on there for the pick goes hard. It's for what's about to happen next. If you see the next picture, it's about to be a massacre out here. My boy's getting put on the pavement out here.
Man, dude, Kramer's about to come out of the blue and say, "What did you do to my cable boy?" or something like that about this guy. It's like, it's not going to be good. But still, gotta say, pick goes hard. Feel free to screenshot. It is certainly one of the pictures. But moving on from that, it's this goofy picture, this guy on a scooter. We're now moving on into the Russian casualty report, where we got to see that the losses are losses.
Oh! 10 Bobcat skid steers in one day. That's a large sitting. Also, one plane. That's crazy, too. These losses are crazy across the board. And look, we got our honorary propagandist over there in the comments like usual. They said, nobody believes those numbers. Cheap propaganda.
And his name
assure you, this is not cheap. This is expensive propaganda.
And his name, when you say it, it sounds like what I said when I saw his mother. I went, L. Oh, but beyond that, I gotta give you. Let's look at that guy's account.
Now you better be careful.
Oh,
look, he's got Russia in the line. Yeah, look at that. That's one of those accounts.
And then has an eyeball. This man ain't seeing. This man ain't seeing nothing. But anyways, beyond that, 1,140 Russian soldiers ended up getting knocked out over the past 24 hours, along with 13 APCs, 77 supply trucks, 14 main battle tanks, 65 artillery pieces, 35 drones, 1 cruise missile, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and the 10 Bobcat skid steers. Today was a day, and I gotta say, it is beautiful to know that they were able to knock out all of these Russian forces and once again try and hold the lines as best as they could. Moving on out of that area and on towards the direction of Vovchansk, we got to see that the Russians are not doing too well in this area, and so they are starting to rain down the white phosphorus and incendiaries back onto the Ukrainians. They're just kind of standing out under that, aren't they? Like, they're not really that phased that there is burning hot debris coming down on top of them. You know what I mean?
Man, they're not moving. They're, typically they run, but they're not moving. They stayed the brave.
They're pretty hardcore. But moving on from that, we also get to see on the other side of the border a GMLRS hitting buildings where Russian soldiers were housed. And this time we got that trap rap beat. And it looks like they got him.
Man, they try to edit this video like a rap music video or something. What's going on?
Aw, man, it's time to cover some rap beefs. Gets 30 views. Damn it, why aren't y'all here for my rap beefs? Oh, man.
They're really slamming them hard, though. Oh, what the?
Hold on, we gotta unmute the video during that one segment. All right, we're gonna immediately mute that because that is absolute cancer coming through the headset.
Man, what was that guy talking about? Like walking through his house, he said, "I'm going to turn the lights off tomorrow. I'm going to go walk through my house and put some potatoes in the stove." It's like, what the hell is he talking about? He's like talking about his regular like household activities in the song.
Dude, he said Predator SSD GM 7000 quick start guide. It's like what the hell are you talking about, man? Like, what the hell does that mean? But moving on out of the Vovchansk area and away from that trash rap, we're now moving on down into the area of Krasnoyarchensk, where we got to see an SUV attempting to avoid a Ukrainian drone. There's the SUV right down there. You see it trying to make its way down the road. The Ukrainian FPV drone is just kind of chilling behind it, waiting for its moment to strike. Oh, wait a minute. It looks like the SUV is doing some hard maneuvers down there for a second. Oh, it's doing it again a little bit. Oh, it's careening into a ditch. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. They hit the side of the ditch so hard they blew up. The FPV drone didn't even hit the car. It literally just blew up on impact with the ditch. I cannot believe this.
Go back. I got to see it again. I got to see that again.
Okay, look. Careens into the ditch. Boom. Blows up. Like, no drone hit it or anything.
That's crazy. Like, they took themselves out, man. They were so terrified of what was about to happen, they took themselves out.
Dude, that is something new. I've never seen something like this before. That is even worse than Tony. I mean, with Tony, at least some people lived. I don't think anyone lived through that, and that car is on fire. Like, that thing is already burning down to the ground, like, just seconds after they hit the side of the berm.
Man, this Ukrainian drone was not expecting to come back, but now it's going back to base, I guess.
Yeah, dude, look at the drone. It's, like, circling around like, yeah, I've never seen this before. What the hell is this? It's like, me either. I don't know what that is at all. But moving on from that and down near Lysychansk and Syeverodonetsk, we got to see a Russian BMP-2 get blown up. Here's the BMP-2. Oh! It got blown up. As many of y'all can see, fire and fury, the likes of which can never be seen. Oh! Man, that thing's cooking. Oh!
It's good when they burn like a roaster. You know, like Kenny Rogers roasters.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, I think this thing is roasting through because, like, when the little pops of the ammo are going off, like, the pop is coming out of all sides. Like, it's getting bright all over when that thing explodes. So it looks like it has been blown through. Just like Christmas. But moving on from that and down near Bakhmut, we also got to see the Ukrainians taking out Russian recon drones with a stick. See the stick on the end of this drone? They're going to poke it. They're going to poke the Zala with a stick. Oh, well, I don't think they hit it with a stick, but they hit it with a drone, so that kind of counts. And now we got a bigger stick. They found out that the big stick is what they need. Like Teddy Roosevelt said, speak softly and carry a big stick. And, buddy, are they speaking softly and carrying a giant stick?
Well, I think it's actually pretty stable. That what is it, the Orlan or
the Zala?
Bang. That's actually holding up pretty good at that stick.
Dude, they're just beating this thing with a stick like an angry grandmother. And bam, they finally got the propeller right there. And then the clip ended. But still, really cool to see them getting those Zalas that way. I've never seen them hitting them with sticks, but, you know, something new every day. Moving on down into New York, we also got to see some pictures of New York. This ain't Times Square, but this is the central area close to New York. I'll actually show y'all where this picture was. In New York, it's a small industrial area near to the outskirt of the town. Where's New York? Here's New York. So this is New York. This is the industrial area that they were showing right here. It's kind of towards the northern area of the town. Most of it's down here. But this is where the picture was taken. Also, I got to say, man, this little industrial area here, they had rails running everywhere. Like, it's actually kind of cool. But anyways.
Times Square, but it's the... I said it's not Times Square, but it's the square of the times, if you know what I mean.
Oh, 100%, man. I would not doubt that at all. We can also see, of course, the city has taken a decent amount of battle damage. Most Ukrainian citizens have already been evacuated. But we can see that the battle for New York is going on at the moment. And hopefully the Ukrainians will be able to succeed in the defensive effort. Moving on from that and down near Semenivka, we also got to see an FPV drone striking Russian equipment. Also, really quickly, while we show this clip, I'll make a quick mention that currently a small amount of Ukrainian forces are being threatened with encirclement a little distance away, near to the town of Progress. From what we understand, it is a smaller element of the 31st Brigade. It is not the entirety of the 31st Brigade. We believe it's maybe a half battalion force, about 400 men or something along those lines, and some odd vehicles that are currently within this possible envelopment or possible pocket that may be created by the Russian, from what we know, at least from what they said, it may be the 54th Combined Arms Army, although we heard that the 54th Combined Arms Army was in the Zaporizhia front, last we were told. So we will have to try and confirm what Russian army is possibly threatening the smaller group with encirclement, but from what I've heard, it may be the 54th Combined Arms Army. So take that with a grain of salt for the moment until we confirm that a little bit more, but that's what we have. But we can still see the FPV drones wiping out these Russians. And that's the end of the clip right there. Nice to see the Presidential Brigade getting to do that. This also says Okrema Prezidentska Brigada. That's what it says in Ukrainian, interestingly enough. And then it says Imeni... let's see, Getmana, Bogdana, let's see, Melnisgogo. I don't know how to say that last word, but that might be close. But anyways, moving on from that, really cool to see. Moving on down into the area around Avdiivka, we also get to see a Pantsir S1 destroyed, and I can already tell that this one's going to be fire. I'm just going to mute the funk music there for a second, but in a second the meme's going to hit. It's a little bit outdated, a little bit old, but here we go. High Mars fires, and here comes the good part of the meme. Man, he's going to love this one.
I've already seen it, man. I had it in my video.
Man, hang on. It's coming. There we go. Yay!
Yeah,
That joke has...
Today, man. I was like, it was shocked me, though, because I didn't know it was in there when I played it earlier. And I was like, yeah, there's that girl or whatever. So I just tried to skip past it.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, that joke hasn't been used 30,000 times in the past 3 weeks. It can't be old. But there goes the Russians.
She had really great war analysis. You know, she deserved to become famous with her war analysis. Like, that was tremendous. Like, ground-shaking intellect. I've never seen it.
Dude, they said, what should America do for Ukraine war support? And she said, "Huck, tool, and spit on that." It's like, all right, that's appreciated. Thank you, thank you. But moving on from that, we also got to see Ukrainian artillery blowing the rooftop off of a Russian tank here. We can see one explosion close to the tank. The tank is not phased. Oh, dead on the front glacis. Wait a minute, that actually looked like it was on the turret. The crew is concussed, quite obviously. And they come to a stop, and the crew gets out and runs away. Because a 155mm shell landing literally on the roof of the turret is either wounded some. It looks like only one guy got out, so maybe everyone else got turned into tomato puree in there. But it either concussed the crew, or it caused some kind of a rapid pressurization and may have ended up knocking out or killing most of them inside the tank. But moving on from that, a little bit of a morbid end, but moving on from that, we also got to see another direct hit on a Russian tank. That is actually a duplicate. And so we're going to be moving on out of that area and further down the line to Pavlivka, where we got to see the 68th Brigade destroying some incoming Russian infantry. And they got that honey badger out here, man.
Hey!
Hey!
He's got the axe on the shoulder like, hi-ho, off to work I go.
No, better yet, man. This thing has been going, hi-ho, hi-ho. It's time for the mustache to grow. But anyways.
Are you seeing this? Look at this remix they've done.
Man, they love making remixes out of this. And then people sit there and say, how in the world can we laugh through a war? Hell, the Ukrainians are making a trap beat remix out of it. Like, what in the world are we supposed to do? Land now. Shuriken. I know how to say that.
I want to see that Shrike group come back again.
Oh, man, I'm telling you what, man. Those Shrikes, those were something. But you see them coming on down, and the clip ends there. But y'all know what happened. Y'all know. Moving on from that, and a little bit further down the line, we also got to see near Huilopol a Ukrainian drone hitting a Russian hideout. More music. I'm telling you, man, the Ukrainians just do not respect copyright. Like they just clip the music and use it. But we can see them hitting Russian bases in this area, or Russian outposts more so.
I just realized that on this drone, they have a bomb meter on the side. Like, it shows them how many are left or something over there on the left.
Huh, I didn't even notice that. That is pretty cool, though.
I've never noticed that either. That's different. That's probably very useful.
Man, they just get to count them down. You know what I mean? They're like, okay, we're on our third. Oh, look, it even highlights them yellow for the one that you selected to drop. That's actually really nice, too. Man, look at that. That is so nice.
They even have the artificial horizon out here. That's not even accurate because they're looking straight down the ground.
Well, I think that's for the drone itself. But, you know, like, hey, it counts. It counts. Oh, dang, bro, they cooking.
Oh.
Man, I'm telling you what, man, keep the Ukrainians away from the griddle because they be cooking till they're burnt. Like, I'm telling you.
Whoa.
Spiraling 69 said, been studying this war closely and checked many sources. Things aren't looking good for Ukraine. The front is collapsing. I'm guessing your source must be the hot dog man, because that's like the only guy saying that. But moving
every other day when the views start getting low, he realizes, oh man, I'm failing. Let me throw Ukraine under the bus again. The front line's looking ugly. Y'all might want to come listen to this. Just to track it right back in.
Well, let me go get that fair crank organ. Let me see. Hang on.
Fair crank organ. That's interesting. Let's hear what that sounds like.
Let's see. Here we go. I think this is it, man. This might be it. Yeah, here we go. Let me see if I can fast forward to the part where they actually crank the organ. Here we go.
Once you get going, a little bit faster.
A little bit faster. Oh man, Ukraine's front line is losing. Come and watch the show over here. I'm gonna shave my face and get a Mr. T haircut or something like that. That's what he does whenever the viewership gets low, and then it just keeps getting lower. I mean, there's no winning for that guy. But anyways, moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also got to see a Ukrainian Su-27 taking off with some AGM-88 harms mounted underneath, meaning that this thing is conducting a seed mission. Pretty cool to see. Hopefully it was effective, but you never really know. You never know if these are effective or not. To be honest, they're probably not. The chances of these things hitting a actual radar is pretty low, considering that they're being fired blind into the horizon, and they're just hoping to pick up something and then go for it. So we don't know if this is effective or not, but still, they are trying, and it does end up being effective here and there, or at least shut off some radars for a little bit. But moving on from that, and on out of that news, it's now time for us to move up to Kyiv and cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 882 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech.
Give me speech. I want a real speech.
Long-lasting speech. And here is the speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Почав сьогодні день з доповіді щодо роботи ППО, закінчення тренування наших воїнів та розгортання патріотів в Україні. Друге, сьогодні вже доволі детально спланували нашу роботу на серпень-вересень із закордонними аудиторіями, інформаційну роботу, зустрічі, перемовини, участь у самітах. Зараз цими тижнями в світі хоч і сезон відпусток, але у нас жодних пауз бути не може, і тим більше не може бути перерв у донесенні інформації про Україну, про наш захист від російського терору, про наші потреби. Є вже чіткий графік роботи і попередньо погоджені, зокрема і зустрічі з лідерами на новий політичний сезон в світі. Україна буде отримувати все, що необхідно, щоб вистояти і досягти своїх завдань. Сьогодні ж було кілька доповідей, які додають більш ясного розуміння і завдань, і потреб. Була доповідь керівника служби зовнішньої розвідки Олега Іващенка про те, чого очікувати найближчим часом і якими можливостями обов'язково Україні треба скористатись. Також детально поговорили з міністром оборони України Рустемом Умєровим щодо забезпечення наших військових завдань на цей місяць. Готуємо новини. Говорив сьогодні із головкомом Сирським, була доповідь щодо фронту наших захисних дій. Міністр закордонних справ Дмитро Кулеба, який цими днями із візитом в Китаї провів перемовини зі своїм колегою та доповів мені щодо результатів зустрічі. Візит українського посадовця на такому рівні вперше за багато років. І це добре. Є чіткий сигнал, що Китай підтримує територіальну цілісність та суверенітет України. А також було підтверджено і те, що мені говорив лідер Китаю Сі Цзіньпінь, що Китай не постачатиме зброю Росії. Детальну доповідь міністра я очікую по поверненню в Україну. І ще одне. Поспілкувався з нашими олімпійцями, з командою України, яка вже цього тижня представить нашу державу, наш український народ на літніх іграх в Парижі. Це вже досягнення українців, що у час такої війни і повномасштабного російського терору ми все ж підготувались, ми все ж беремо участь в Олімпіаді, наш прапор, український гімн будуть у Франції на рівних з усіма націями, які поважають життя, які поважають принципи олімпізму. Я дякую всім, хто допомагає Україні берегти якнайбільше елементів нормального життя. Попри все, дякую всім, хто захистив принципи олімпізму від спотворення і не допустив прапорів на Олімпіаді та участі держави-терориста. Путін робить так, що єдиний російський спорт сьогодні – це вбивство людей. І світ ніколи не буде толерувати це. Росія повинна програти у війні, програти у терорі. Тоді виграє життя. Все для цього робимо. Слава Україні!
And
Heroes Slava.
And with that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky on day 882 of the war. Hey, let's give it up for Zelensky. And with that, we're going to be moving on into the second segment of the stream.
I'm just saying that patch board was so perfectly done. Like, can we get a still shot of the patch board? Like, that was so impressive looking. I got to see that again. It was so perfectly lined up. It was like I did it myself. It was literally that, like, perfectly lined up. Let's see here.
I'm actually going to say that I was a little bit confused with the board, Matthew. I really was, because I want to show you something. All right, there are a couple of units here that we can recognize, like the 72nd right up there, and then the 93rd Холодный Яр somewhere around here. Where the hell did the Холодный Яр go? What the hell? I was looking at it a second ago. Where the hell did it go? Where the hell is the 93rd? Oh, right up here by the 72nd. And then they have, let's see, what was it? I think this is the 31st Brigade down here. And then they have the 47th Magura right here. And then they have the 47th Magura right there. And then they have the 47th Magura right there. Like, I thought this was actually like a board representing the brigades in the Ukrainian army. But apparently it might just be any kind of a patch that looks cool, because there are several Magura patches for this 47th Magura up on this board.
Zelensky said, I can't have any blank spaces on the board. It will mess up my OCD. Put up extra patches.
He said, more patches, bigger patches, better patches. We need
long-lasting patches.
Long-lasting patches. But let's see here. What other patches does he have up here on this board? Like, he has, let's see, he has the Airborne, the 72nd. Okay, cool. He has the police up there at the top. That's pretty cool. Some kind of a U.S. SEAL up there at the top. Do you see that, Matthew? Up there, like up the top? That's a U.S. SEAL.
Who knows where he got that from? We'll keep that quiet.
He's got a Panda. He's got the Kraken unit. The Punisher, or apparently Call of Duty Ghosts. That's a pretty good unit. Also, Matthew, that it looks like the Bucky's flag I showed you that one time with the Ukrainian flag right there, and then above it, you know, like, all right.
Oh no, he's got the Bucky's gone wild patch.
But we also got the Pigeon. We got the Pigeon, and let's see, we had the 92nd right there. What other unit? I forgot which unit that is, but I've seen it. 42nd Artillery. Actually, I think that's the 45th Artillery, if I'm right. Let's see here. What else? That's another mountain unit, because they have the Edelweiss, but I forgot which one that is. And we've seen this unit before, and we've seen the Magura plenty of times. They're oh, look, they actually have the GRU goals or something like that. And then they got the Ukrainian Marines. Let's see, what else? The NASAMs. Apparently they have a special patch for the NASAMs. And then they have like the copy paste like lion face thing with a different color backing below it. Let's see here. Dang, I can't really recognize. I know this unit. They're in Zaporizhia currently. That's the 54th Brigade. That's the Azov, the 3rd Brigade. That's the 31st. And then the rest of these units, we haven't really seen them a lot. This is actually, I think, the Sheikh Mansour right there, if I'm right. Correct me if I'm wrong. But beyond that, pretty cool to see the board. But a lot of Maguras, an unbelievable amount of Maguras are up on this board for some reason. But anyways, it is really clean, though. Like, the way they put it out, like, it's clean.
That is very clean, I gotta say. When I saw it, I got jealous of it. I was like, can I have that in my office?
Man, you said, it's for me? It's like, no, it's not for you, it's for me. But beyond that, after looking at that patch board, which is pretty interesting, it is time for us to move on into...
Oh, we got a little lag.
Wow! Wow! Why does it have to happen to me? Oh, why do they have to do it to me? Oh my goodness. This is sad. It's sad.
Are we back?
Are we back? Are we?
I think...
Oh, those damn carp. But anyways, I think we're back. But it's time for us to get on into the second segment of the stream. And y'all all know what we're about to do. We're about to talk to all of y'all, you silly geese. It's incredibly fun. I mean, we get to talk about anything and everything y'all want to talk about. History, rabbit holes, hood reviews. Like, hood reviews are literally just us looking anywhere now. It's not even the hoods. Like, people just pick places and we look at them. Anything and everything y'all want to talk about, the war in Ukraine, China, all that kind of stuff. We could talk about any of it at all. And M Vlogger said, "You never left." I never left. Matthew knows that joke, but still, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so moving into our final question segment of the night. Real quick, I want to grab this super chat from Andy L before he leaves for the night, and we'll get to our poll in just a minute. But Andy L put in a combined $60 donation.
Dang.
And huge shout out to you, Andy, for that massive support as always. He's always very generously supporting the channel. We appreciate that very much, Andy. He says, "I'm going to the range early in the morning at 800 yards, and to take a question from the chat, and night, I'll say."
And good night to you, Andy L. I hope you sleep well, and I hope you're able to hit a good sub-MOA grouping at 800 yards, which means that it would be about tighter than about 8 inches across from top to bottom, left to right. I hope you were able to hit that sub-MOA grouping at 800 yards. That would be incredibly cool. I know you will, Andy L, because you got like that freaking wild, like, marksman
That wild
rifle.
gun, that sniper.
Yeah, that thing could shoot the wings off a fly a mile away. So I know you're going to be hitting 800 yards, no doubt. But still, thank you so much for the amazing and massive support. We will make sure to take a question from the chat, but thank you always, Andy L, for being here with us, always watching this stream, and always enjoying it greatly and finding it worthwhile to help it to keep running. We do this every single day, as you know, 6 days a week. Y'all keep us company while we cover this, and in a sense, we might keep some of y'all company, but I really feel like it's the other way around. Y'all keep us company doing this, because we would be here 6 days a week, regardless whether there were 9,000 people here live, or just 2,000 people here live, or even just 3 people here live. We would still be doing this every day. So I got to thank you, Andy L, and everyone else who's joined us tonight for keeping us company while we continue to track the news and cover what's going on around the world. And so, with that, thank you so much once again. We will make sure to get that live chat question. But of course, long live Lee Spring Army, and good night, and I hope you sleep well, Andy L. What do we got?
And the live chat question sponsored by Andy L is going to go to Wobbly Wheels, who says, "Have you heard of the current military exercise in Australia?"
I have not heard of the current military exercise in Australia. I actually have to declare ignorance on that, because that might be out of my periphery. Might be in my periphery at the moment, where I haven't really been paying attention to that much. But Matthew, have you heard anything about a military exercise in Australia?
No, sadly, I haven't heard either. If it's happening, it hasn't really been getting a lot of attention, because I would have seen it by now. So it could be maybe routine. I'm not really sure, let's see, what did the question ask here? They asked, "Have you seen the exercise?" So yeah, it must be just a routine one, because I haven't seen anything about it.
Yeah, I would have to say I haven't heard about it either. Also, Matthew, I was wondering, what does this... So there's nothing here. I thought there was a town here. Like you said, Simpson. There's nothing here. What? There's only 2 pictures. Like, I want to see what's down there. There's nothing in there. Like, hang on, hold up. I want to see why it's so red out here. Like, what does it look like? My goodness.
That's barren.
That's pretty barren, man. Like, this red dirt, though, it reminds me of Alabama. You know, like that red dirt down in lower Alabama in LA.
Yeah, that's true. This is that type of land right here. You could like really fly down it with like a truck or something like that, and it would kick up all that dust and look cool. Like a lot of flat land out here.
Man, I'm telling you, that would be pretty cool to do. And then you could go to Alice Springs, and then you could get detained by the special guys out there who are working in the secure facility. Where the hell? I never remember where the hell that secure facility is, Matthew, when we look around here. It's south of the city.
Pine Gap.
Yeah, Pine Gap. I don't know where in the world that is relative to Alice Springs.
I don't know either, to be honest with you. I'm at a bit of a loss. You know, those teenagers broke in there a while ago.
Yeah, and then they got like roughed up by the oh, here we go. Here it is. It's right there. Why in the world do I always miss it? And then they got roughed up by the security guys.
Yeah, it's true. They did.
Man, I like how their road is just called track.
I like that. It's very simplistic. Not too complicated.
Excuse me, sir. I just got my new deployment orders. I'm supposed to be going to Alice Springs. How do I get there? Yeah. You're gonna take a left on Alice Springs Road, and then you're gonna go down that track. What track? You'll see it. Like, you'll know what I mean when you see it. It's like, no, I know, man. What the hell? That's like the most ambiguously named road ever. That's like just calling it road or trail. It's like,
it is crazy, man. You know, honestly though, like, do y'all really want to know what happens at Pine Gap? Do you want to? Can we tell them?
Yeah, sure.
So you see what they did here, and this is new information. Just came out. these white balls right here, these are the balls that Putin wish he had, but he never will have. Right there. That's what happens at Pine Gap. They're storing the balls that Putin never had right there.
But if y'all really want to know what happens at Pine Gap,
We can't tell you that because we don't know.
what do you mean? What do you mean? We do.
We don't know,
I'm just
Jack.
kidding.
We
Yeah,
don't
I'm just
know.
kidding. We don't know what happens at Pine Gap. It's a relay station. They transmit messages from this area of the world across to America. The reason why it's so far inland is because spy ships off the coast of Australia aren't able to intercept the messages from all the way inside of Australia at this point. So the messages are entirely secure and they can't even be intercepted and attempted to be decrypted by spy ships, for example, from the Chinese or from the Soviet Union or now the modern day Russian Federation. So the more you know, that's why it's there. But the whole entire thing, the whole entire purpose this serves is literally just to transmit encrypted messages from this area of the world back to the United States. But with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. I mean, the best that we can, but still, thank you so much for sponsoring that live chat, Andy L, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for the support. And man, dude, that troll thought he was throwing down the law. I saw some people apparently read it, but I was like, huh, let me read it. Stop giving false info. The only false info I gave them is saying that your mother is an upstanding woman. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
But seriously speaking, if you're curious at what Pine Gap actually does, it's not. You would think right off the bat, it's in close proximity to China, and I'm sure they probably do have intelligence like operations dealing with China there. But it is a satellite gathering and signals intel place where they try to connect with satellites and they get information from that. And for some reason, there's something unique about the location that allows it to easily contact the satellites out here for some reason in Australia. I don't know how that works or why it works like that, but it's perfect for satellite intelligence and also the uplink to the satellites. For some reason, I couldn't tell you, it's above my pay grade. But anyways, jumping into our next super chat here, we have a $50 donation from none other than LSA Rocks. And thank you very much, LSA Rocks, for that support. He said, hi to all the LSA and a good amount tonight, and I see. Keep on a rockin'.
And I gotta say, thank you for the support, LSA Rocks, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, a good amount tonight, you see. I would say so. We YouTube told us that the peak viewership we had is 5.3. That means it's actually up around 7.5 or so. But still, it is a wonderful amount of people who've been here tonight. And I got to thank you, LSA Rocks, for being one of those people and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running so that way everyone can continue to come here each and every night, 6 days a week, and hear the news of what's going on out there around the world. And so with that, thank you so much once again. We are going to keep on rocking. And thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again, LSA Rocks, for always supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And also, Vari Mendebratis, speaking of the Pine Gap base there, he said maybe it's because there's a geostationary satellite posted directly above the Pine Gap base. That rings a bell. That sounds like it could be accurate. I can't remember for certain, but I think there could be. But once again, a little bit above my pay grade. I only know what's on Wikipedia about the place, just like everybody else knows. This is all on Wikipedia. But it's a very fascinating place. I was fascinated to see those teenagers in Australia who are quite kind of bold going up to try to get into the place. They got detained after they tried to get in because obviously the base guards were suspicious. Like, hey, what are you doing trying to get in here? Are you a spy or what? But it turned out it was just 3 dumb teenagers. But they didn't get in, long story short. But the security around the base is intense. They have people literally posted everywhere around the perimeter, not just at the gate, but also at the perimeter everywhere else. It's kind of operated like Area 51 is in Nevada. It's kind of like a network of sensors that keeps track of the base itself. This is a very large area, so they can't really put up a massive fence. I think there are fences along some of it, but it's mainly sensors, to my knowledge. But very interesting. I like these like dark sites and stuff like that. It's kind of fascinating.
Well,
but anyways, jump. Yeah, go ahead.
I actually heard, Matthew, I heard this about the Pine Gap area right down here. I heard that apparently some Australians were actually able to sneak into the facility and get some sensitive information lately because the security teams, they couldn't get up on the roofs because the roofs were actually, they had a 1 degree slope to them and it was too steep and a little bit too dangerous for them to get up there. And so they just let them in. Like they just got all the way in the base and got right out. No one even saw them.
You see, the catch here is these bases right here are actually authorized to use lethal force right off the bat. So if you're suspected of doing something fishy and it's threatening the operation of the base, they can simply shoot you, and it's okay. But yet, if you're somewhere in the proximity of someone that's in the United States that might be of importance, they're going to wait. They're not going to do nothing. They're going to wait and see what happens because that's what they do.
It's completely reasonable. It is entirely reasonable. And of course, it makes sense that the roof would be too sloped because it's not like, I don't know, body cam footage came out showing everyone just standing up on the roof perfectly fine, you know? Like, it's like, you know, like, I'm sure it all makes sense. But anyways, moving on from that, you know, just something a little interesting, you know, like, it's a safety matter. But moving on from that, thank you so much for giving support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
I wish anytime anyone gave us like a troll like statement or something in the live chat, we could just give the same statement that everybody else gives. Excuse me, sir. This matter is under investigation. We're currently investigating. We'll soon have a report soon. Thank you very much.
Or better
so,
yet,
can we just give that answer to everybody?
Or better yet, I cannot recall the information that you were requesting right now, which is another one that is wildly common. Like, excuse me,
Mr. Senator, this matter is currently under investigation, and while there's an ongoing investigation, I can't comment on such matters because that might affect the integrity of the result of the investigation. Well, what were we saying again? Investigation? Investigations, please? Can we investigate? Did you investigate the investigation? I don't know.
Maybe we should get a committee put together to investigate the investigatory commission. I mean, we really need some insight, some open transparency. We should
definitely get together 5 or 10 politicians because with all those brain cells, they might be able to figure out something. Maybe. Now, one can't stand on their own 2 feet because it's just the way it works. Let's form a committee. We need at least 30 people on this issue.
Why, we might be able to actually create a bitching fest on C-SPAN to improve their ratings. Get them all out there. Like, get them out of the halls, get them in the committee room. We got to get this going. All right, get in there. And
also, first off, people, remember the first rule of investigation is someone must cater some very expensive lunch. That's the first rule of investigation. And also remember the hours of work are from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. with 10 a.m. being lunch and 1 p.m. being the end of lunch. So that's 2 hours of work per day for this investigation.
And you know something, Matthew? You know something that's actually absurd? I heard that the New York Times got a hold of some information that one of those lunches costed $1,000. You know what time it is? You know what time it is, Matthew?
It's time to whip out that government credit card, baby.
Man, it's time to whip out another investigatory committee to investigate the other investigatory committee that was investigating the original committee that was investigating the original act. It is time to go full damn circle with the investigatory committees. Get those damn people out there and get them in that room so that way everyone can get nowhere fast. All right, and with that...
Also, remember, don't forget, though, at the beginning of your investigation, you have to do the federal icebreakers. You have to do the goofy icebreaker junk because we all have to get to know each other so much better by making fools out of ourselves. So everybody stand up and say something funny about yourself.
Or better yet, Matthew, sit there and say, hello, director. You look like you're having a fun day. Yes, Mr. Senator, I'm having a fun day. Probably having a fun day because you got some pipe laid. What? Nothing. Anyways, or something like that.
Man, I can't stand it when they sneak in those little sneaky one-liners or something. They'll be like, there's those sneaky people asking questions in there. They'll be like, so I just got to admit, I'm a real big fan of yours, and I've been following you for a long time. And I just want to say that book you wrote was so tremendous, and I just wanted to say thank you so much. You're my idol. And they'll be like, oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And then they'll be like, so why are you such an idiot? It's like, what? It's like, damn. It's like, that came in sideways, didn't it? That's a crazy. Like, some of these people get set up, like, for the kill, like, on these questionings, like, in Congress and stuff like that. These people are setting them up for, like, a slaughter fest with the answers. It's always like, that's brutal.
Man, you know what I like even better? You know what I really like? You know, like, speaking about this entirely honestly, I like how the Congress... Like, and of course, while we're talking about this, y'all, I want to make sure that I say this. This is completely non-political because this is just...
Oh, damn. We got some lag. I can't even hear you.
Oh, no, dude. They're hitting us as soon as we're talking about it. Why? Dude, someone from a current standing committee is watching our show and is flatlining us for this. But let's see.
Yeah, they're like, we're revealing the secrets of the universe. You can't have this out.
Yeah, they're like, they've cracked the code. Like they figured it out. We can't have them saying this stuff. But beyond that, you know, one thing that always cracks me up, Matthew. The one thing that cracks me up the most is when the actual people who are in the committee start making low blows to each other. Like, I love that because then it isn't even about the investigation anymore. It's just about throwing shit at each other, and it doesn't even matter. And then the investigation doesn't even matter because everyone is so involved trying to throw crap at each other. That's what I love about investigations the most, is American tax dollars being spent so that way people can sit down in an investigatory committee room and throw insults at each other and get
Oh,
nowhere.
Jack, hold on, Jack. Oh, whoa, Jamal, we got crook on crook violence here. Watch out.
whoa. And also, you know, something else I loved about these investigatory committees, you know what I really love, is that they just they never get, none of them ever do, to the actual crux of what they're supposed to be investigating. You know, like, they'll investigate something, I don't know, like possible embezzling. You know, let's just go with that as an option. All right, possible embezzling that someone has conducted, and they'll bring in someone who may have been involved in this embezzlement, and then they'll sit there and go, did you get teeth whitening 10 years ago? And it's like, what does that have to do?
You know why they do that, though? Like, do you know the real reason why they end up going flat after a certain amount of questions? Do you know why?
Why?
Because they have a group of people that come together and actually write these questions for them. And sometimes they might be involved in it, like the congressman or whoever it is. They might be involved in actually like coming up with the line of questioning that they're going to give to the subject that's been brought in for a hearing. But they'll have these couple of zingers that they need to get their like sound bites, and they'll have those lined up, and they'll be good zingers, and they'll have like a really good punchline and stuff like that. The subject won't be able to answer the question properly, but once they get the sound bite, then they go flat because they didn't have an original thought of their own. They don't know what they're asking really. So then they're like, so why are you dumb? Or some stupid question like that. And everybody's like, how to go from like a genius question to a stupid question? They must have just got tired all of a sudden. It's like, no, they just didn't come up with the questions. That's all.
And I'll say this. All right. We're like, and someone said definitely not political. It isn't, because there is a loophole in our no politics rule. As long as we are making fun of everyone or praising everyone at the same time, regardless of their affiliation, it falls within our no politics rule because we're not openly promoting or supporting any given side. And that's what we're doing right now. But one thing I will say to round this out so we can get back into the question segment is, if y'all vote for me, of course, sadly, only the Alabamians would be able to vote for me right now because I live in Alabama, and if I ran for a congressional representative position, it would have to be for my specific district in Alabama, which means that a lot of y'all wouldn't be able to vote for me in that election. But if I ran for that position and I was in an investigatory committee, I would actually be asking real questions that I would come up with on my own. Because unlike others, which is pretty much everyone right now, I actually have enough brains to be able to come up with some questions to ask that would be pertinent to the actual investigation. So with that, or better yet, y'all, this would probably be the best thing I do. I wouldn't investigate anything that doesn't directly report to the Congress where action can actually be taken against them for anything. Like, you know, like the Department of the Treasury, like, so what if we find out something we don't like? Like, it would still be up to the president to remove them from that position. And then everything we do falls flat because it really just matters whether this treasurer is in with the president or not, or some hypothetical scenario like that. So why in the world even investigate? It wouldn't matter. Like that's like the thing. And that's one crazy thing that I just don't get about a lot of these investigatory committees, is that they investigate things and come to conclusions sometimes, actually like unanimous conclusions, but it's on something in the executive branch, and it doesn't matter what conclusion they come to because that person is probably not going to be removed from that position. So, you know, I'm like, why in the world even waste everyone's time with this investigation? It's not going to get anywhere. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and, you know, at least in my opinion. And with that, we're going to be moving on and into the next one. But still, I hope y'all enjoyed that. I hope it was funny, and I hope it was fair and across the board, because I made it as fair and across the board as possible. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Terrence Custer, who puts in a $20 donation. And a huge shout out to you, Terrence, for the support. Once again, he says, happy belated birthday, and no sharing, LOL. And thank you very much, Terrence, for the happy birthday as well. He said, my question is, should the U.S. send a message that will start limiting Chinese imports to the USA?
I don't think we should send that kind of a message. Really good message, though. I like the idea behind it, Terrence. But I would say we shouldn't send that kind of a message. We should send them the message that their industrial base is declining because we are encouraging American businesses to set up shop in other countries elsewhere. Not that we're not going to buy Chinese products, but we're going to buy the products from somewhere else, and we're going to move the factories from inside of China elsewhere, because that might force the Chinese out of their slow and very methodical decision-making processes and into something rash and quick. Which usually ends up being to their detriment. It's really like everything we do with the Chinese isn't really about winning against them. It's really about making them act rashly, because in that rash decision making, they usually end up working against themselves. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. But yeah, in the large sense, I would agree with that, but it would have to be a little bit more nuanced with the approach and try and freak out the Chinese decision-making circles so that way they start doing things that are fairly stupid and fairly detrimental to themselves. Like trying to seize private businesses and their assets that are in China to stop them from being able to invest in another country and move elsewhere. That would be a lot more beneficial than saying we're just going to stop doing business, because then those companies kind of already do that anyways, and we've kind of made sure that the rash actions consequences happen, but the Chinese weren't able to make the rash actions themselves to be able to sour things in the long run, in the big picture, at least in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running and supporting and making it possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, let's see here. I saw someone here. Let's see. Someone said something about, Steve. He said, I've never seen things so unstable globally. Speaking of the China situation right here. And honestly, Steve, I'll have to agree with you. I think, obviously, I'll say this, and we can't get too far into it because YouTube doesn't like us talking about it. But back in 2019, 2020, there was a bad bug that came around. Things went a little haywire then. But I didn't think it was going to get much more chaotic than that. But we've had a lot of first times just this year, and it's already just July of this year, and we've already had so many things that are like first times in history. And, I'm getting tired of the first time in history routine. I wish things would sort of settle out or calm back down, but I don't see any sign of that actually happening, because things are only escalating further and further. And there's really no one putting the brakes on anything around the world. It seems like everybody's kind of like putting the gas on. And to me, that's not that good, because it's leading to instability and more things like that. So literally every category you can think, politics, pretty much everything. We're having first times that we've never seen. And it's just crazy. Also, I see some folks saying, you're too young, you're too young. Y'all tell me when y'all seen something like this, because I've never seen anything like this. I've asked my parents, they've never seen anything like this that we're seeing like globally right now, or nothing. It's just crazy. But what are you thinking, Forster? Is it crazy or not?
I would say it's pretty crazy. Like as far as like how long ago was it this crazy? I would say maybe the lead up to World War II was about this crazy. Maybe. But this is about the craziest it's gotten, especially in the post-Cold War world. This is as insane and whack as it has been historically. There have been other times, at least during the Cold War, that I think was pretty scary, like the Cuban Missile Crisis. That certainly was as scary and dangerous a time as it is now. But as far as the world is going now, it is a very concerning time, at least to me, looking at it from a historical lens. This is a moment in time. Hopefully many can take pride in this, although the actual meaning behind this is a little bit not so great. But rest assured, everyone, that in 40 years' time, children will be sitting in school, and during the last 2 weeks of the school year, they will get a quick brush over of modern history on this specific time that we're living through right now. It's a little bit of joy out of that, because there will be people who pay attention to this on in the future about what happened during this time, because it is certainly a very important and pivotal time in world history, like many are. And so maybe that'll comfort you all a little bit, to make you feel like, hey, at least it's stressful but with purpose. People will be talking about this in the future. But yeah, I would say that this is a fairly concerning time, at least in my opinion.
Isn't it kind of interesting, like, for example, just back in 2019, before the bad bug came around, for some reason, when the bad bug came around, it like set the whole world on fire, and it hasn't really got under control since. I think that was the catalyst for it. was that thing right there. Not saying it's a conspiracy theory. It was just simply the bug came around and it sent the world kind of into a bit of a unstable moment because nobody's really sure what to do with it or how to handle it. And from there, it just went even more haywire with that. Not saying that's the sole cause of it, but that's one pretty big reason. But even if you think back to just 2019, you think, oh, like life wasn't that great then. But now when you see what's happening in 2024 and you look back to 2019, you're like, wow, we didn't really know how good we had it just 5 years ago. That was really wild. You thought back then, like, that's not going too great. So like, blah, 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 blah. It makes your woes in 2019 look like nothing that we're currently going through right now. And hopefully we're not going to think that in 2 more years. We're going to look back at 2024 and think, we didn't know how good we had it in 2024. Hopefully we're thinking, okay, 2024 was the worst of it, and it got better from there. So I don't know how it's going to go. Not really sure, but it's been crazy.
And also, really quickly, that's true. But I saw Clam Jansen say, or Clam Jensen. I don't know if the J is supposed to be pronounced a Y or a J, but they said there's already teens that don't know about 9/11. That's true. But the thing with that is that I don't really care what most people know, because the reality is that there are a lot of stupid people out there. Like a lot of people, like here's the thing that a lot of people don't, a lot of people think in America, a lot of people think that Americans are stupid and everyone else in the world is smart. Everyone in the world is stupid for the large part. Like you can fairly bank on that, at least in general, or like surface level knowledge of most things. A lot of people don't know a damn thing. Like if you tell someone, like, point at Italy on a map, like from Italy, like they will be from Italy, will have lived in Italy their entire lives. That's the country they're from. They will point at Poland or something and say that's Italy. Like people are generally fairly ignorant. Like that's something you can work off of a lot. And a lot of people don't know history either. Like some people think that the Titanic was sailing during World War II, or for example, Abraham Lincoln was the president during World War II, or something like that. You know, like you have like a whole bunch of people who think stuff like that, or they don't know history or anything about the past, where they think that things nowadays are pretty freaking bizarre. Like for example, with the assassination of a presidential candidate attempt that happened a while ago, my parents were actually talking a little bit about this today. They were like, isn't that weird that they said the police officer that was actually on that roof got hot and walked away, and that's how the gunman got up there? I said, well, that's not that weird. You know, like, that's not that bizarre, because Abraham Lincoln got shot in the back of the head because his Secret Service bodyguard, who was guarding the stairway up to his booth, literally just said, I'm kind of bored, I'm going to go drink, and then walked off to the bar next door, and that's when John Wilkes Booth walked up the stairs and shot Abraham Lincoln in the back of the head and jumped off of the balcony. You know, you know, like if you know history, a lot of the things that happen aren't really that crazy or shocking or mysterious. It's just kind of like, yeah, you know, people are that stupid. Like that has happened in the past. There's a precedent for that kind of stupidity. And there's a precedent.
No, when you're going through it, it doesn't feel like, you know, it doesn't feel like, oh, it's happened before, it's okay. When you're going through it, it feels like, oh God, like what's happening next is like, you're not really sure what's going on. It's kind of going haywire. And also the anticipation of not knowing exactly what's going to happen. Like, for example, with Russia, is Russia going to simply walk away from this thing in Ukraine one day, or are they going to go all in and like try to blow their entire country up by attacking NATO? All these unknowns is really what creates anxiety in people, and even the anxiety from these things happening causes more chaos to happen, because believe it or not, when people look at stuff like this, even in their normal lives, they start feeling upset every single day. And even though it may not impact their normal lives right now, because we're obviously not at war, it does create instability in people's minds just around the world, because it feels like things are off kilter. And that also creates, you know, angst in people and just anxiety overall, and people start going bonkers just in their normal life.
I mean, that's true. You know, it doesn't feel like it's happened before. I mean, maybe, I don't know, because I look at it differently, because when I see things happening, I'm like, oh, you know, that kind of looks like this and that happened back in the past. That's kind of cool. Like, I actually just think, oh, that's kind of neat. It looks like it's kind of doing the same thing it did like 200 or 300 years ago or something like that. Or, you know, really during World War II, because World War II actually is like a hallmark, like everything happened in World War II, really. But beyond that, to me, like when I hear stuff like the Chinese and the Russians are teaming up, I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. That's kind of like Italy and Germany teaming up before World War II, or Germany and Japan kind of having like that mutual agreement during World War II. Stuff like that. I'm always like, oh, that's kind of cool. Or, for example, like when someone almost gets shot at, I'm like, hey, that's pretty cool. That's like when Teddy Roosevelt got shot at, or Lincoln got shot at, or, you know, really any other president, or, you know, like, for example, with Europe and like a declining industrial base, it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's kind of like Britain post World War II, you know, and like they were having to deal with that whole conundrum. Or, for example, you know, like there's a load of times in history where I look at things that are happening now and I'm like, hey, that's kind of cool. It's like happening again. And that's why
And also, just to make it clear, when you say that was cool, you just mean like it was just like, you know, it is what it is, like, because it came off kind of weird on that
well,
last
yeah,
one there about the shooting.
yeah, you know, like when I say that's kind of cool, you know, because some people are going kind of cool. Like I don't mean it as in like, wow, that's neat, I like it. I mean that's kind of cool as in, that's like the similarities are striking to me, and so I'm like, that's kind of neat. It like happened again, and then you get to, in a sense, kind of live through the historical event in a modern day perspective. In a sort of a sense, you know, like the presidential candidate getting shot at was much like Teddy Roosevelt getting shot at. If you look at the historical semblance there, it's almost a one-to-one replica of the Teddy Roosevelt assassination attempt, and that's where I go, oh, that's kind of cool, because you sit there and look at that and you're like, dang, like you actually got to live through a historical event and see it in real time and see how people reacted to it, like they would have about 100 years ago or so, because people reacted to the Teddy Roosevelt shooting just about the same way that people reacted in the modern day to the attempted assassination of that presidential candidate. And that's what's kind of cool about it, you know, if anything's cool about that sort of stuff, is that you get to see major historical events like that, but you're actually living through the time that they're happening, and then you can see them in the past and how people did things back then, and you see that people pretty much do the identical thing that they did back then 100 years ago today, and that's what's kind of interesting about it, and that's what I meant by kind of cool, because some people were like, kind of cool. I didn't mean it as in kind of cool that the guy almost got shot. That was, of course, like a tragedy, and you know, and of course that is.
Oh yeah, I knew what you meant. I knew what you meant, by the way. I was just making sure, because we got haters that watch and they'll be trying to morph your words and stuff like that. I just wanted to clarify it.
Yeah, but hopefully I made that clear with that, because let me try and make sure to hit that home. Things like that are kind of cool, not because it's, you know, like I like watching the world burn or anything. It's kind of cool because it happened in the past and you get to see it and live through it in real time again, and it's like, wow, that's neat. Like, you know, like, and on top of that, it's also kind of neat because in the future, like 60 years in the future, you know, for me, like when I'm like 80 or so, I'm going to have grandkids, and these grandkids are going to be asking, so what was it like to live through the time that so-and-so got shot at? Or what was it like to live through the time when Russia and China became allies? And you get to sit there and you actually get to know, I lived through that time in history, such a pivotal moment, and I actually knew and saw what was happening to be able to talk about it to future generations. And that is something that is also really cool about it as well, is that while it's not fun to live through, I'll admit with that, it's not fun to live through this kind of stuff. It is stories that you get to tell your future generations about, which is always going to be really fun to do looking back in hindsight, although everyone hates living through it, which is the reality of it. And so with that,
I think it's interesting to live through history until you become a part of history, and that's when it turns not so interesting. It turns into a bit of a horror, because if it ever turns into like a global conflict, which, you know, it's a real possibility. Not saying it's going to happen for certain, but it is a possibility. The moment we have to get involved in that, because we are of draft age, that's when it turns less from being interesting to, oh God, now it's time to survive, because now we're like actually living through the history that we've heard about way back in the day. So once you actually get your hands dirty in it, it starts getting real, and then it starts turning into a bit of a horror show of a sorts.
And also, that is true. Also, I saw people saying maybe interesting is a better word to use than cool. Probably so, but I was trying to come up with a word ad lib, because everything's ad lib, so I don't really get to have a speechwriter think out the exact words I'm saying and think about them carefully. Interesting probably is a much better word to use, but to me, in my kind of a jargon, I would say that's pretty cool. Although, you know, cool doesn't mean cool as in, wow, I really like that. It's just cool as in, wow, that's pretty interesting or pretty wild to see. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here goes to Purple Gerbil yet again, who puts in another $20 donation, and thank you very much to the Purple Gerbil for that support. They said, did you hear about the cocaine-tainted sharks off of Brazil, and a great stream and LSA rules?
Yes, I did. We didn't cover that, but did you hear about it too, Matthew?
They got into that blow.
Aw, man, I didn't just take a trip to Ukraine.
Wait, so suddenly you see like a picture of Hot Dog Man, and it slowly starts morphing his nose and his face into a shark.
Oh man, that wouldn't be that far off. Well, actually, he looks like some kind of a deformed pug, but it wouldn't be that far off, would it? You know, like
For the purposes of this, to get a hold of the cocaine, he'd turn his face into a shark, whatever he needs to do.
bro, he'd be going, dude, I absorb it through my gills, bro. Drop it on my gills or something like that. But still, I gotta say, that is a really crazy story that I actually heard. It's kind of like Cocaine Bear, but in the sea near Brazil. But that is a really wild story. Like when you hear about it, it's like, dang, there's cocaine sharks in the Atlantic, in the South Atlantic, off the coast of Brazil. That is pretty freaking weird when you think about it. But it's a fact. It actually happened. And so yes, I did hear about it. Pretty bizarre, I'm not gonna lie, but it's just kind of like the course of things, you know what I mean? Like Cocaine Bear, or like that, or like Wojak, which isn't just a meme. It was also a bear in World War II that drank alcohol, and it also served in the Polish army, if y'all didn't know, and like, you know, like, it's just kind of like one of those weird things, you know. Someone like Quixer will make a video on that for sure in about a year's time about the cocaine sharks off Brazil, but still. Thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And very, very good question. That's a very fun one. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And also, I just remembered I never actually returned back to that poll question after I took Andy L's super chat. So let's get that poll question. It says, today, reports say a Russian drone struck Romania, meaning NATO territory. And the question is, will NATO respond this time? 39% said they will probably just give strong words to Russia, while 36% said no, NATO will do nothing to Russia. And 17% said yes, NATO will respond this time around. And on this one, folks, I would have to say that we're probably looking at another strongly worded statement. We're probably not looking at anything serious or severe because NATO has a policy at this point of trying to turn the other cheek as many times as possible unless they are forced to do something. It's a very lax and a very sort of defensive-only posture. And really, this is really a perfect situation to use the defensive posture to our advantage since Russia struck Romania. But we will, of course, overlook it. And really, I'm with the 39%. I think it's only going to be strong words. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, oh man, what's going on in Romania? Ew, yuck. But beyond that,
Man, Romania.
dude, when Hot Dog Man hears the word Romania, that flicks through his head. Again, he lives it all over again. The effing Twitter bullshit. But beyond that, I would have to say that we are going to see another strongly worded letter. No one was harmed or killed in the explosion, so for that reason, we will probably see another strongly worded letter. They're not going to be going to war over it. They've shown that multiple times. It seems as though NATO doesn't really have a lot of follow-through with protecting its territory from possible Russian aggression, like this drone that blew up in this area just south of Izmail on the Romanian side of the river. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion, and at least according to my knowledge. But still, thank you so much. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here is going to go to Marion Deemert, the channel legend, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support as well.
Hey!
And they said, you guys rock. Thank you.
Hey, and thank you so much, Marion Demon, for saying we rock. You rock, Marion Demon. I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this channel possible, help us to keep this thing running. And I got to say, that is incredibly kind of you. And I thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And before we move on to the next one, Matthew, I saw Eric Polson say, one of the most kind of cool things is that we, the LSA, get to be online together with the first YouTube channel to use the format created by our fearless leaders, the Enforcer, Matt, and LSA. And hey, that's really nice of you. And also,
Hey.
speaking of the whole cool thing, like I was saying, like I just want to take a quick moment here really quickly to say some of the things that this channel has been around for that I said earlier was pretty cool, but when you think about it, it's pretty interesting, using a better wordage for it, because we were live, or we were almost live when it happened. Remember, y'all, like, this is one that, like, kind of, for some reason, disappeared, but was really a big thing. Y'all remember when Shinzo Abe got assassinated in the suburbs of Osaka? by that lone gunman. Like, we were live on air when that happened. And like that is a very interesting moment to live through in history, because not a lot of prime ministers or former ministers of Japan ever get assassinated. And Shinzo Abe was actually a fairly influential and leading figure in modern Japan. So to see something like that happen while we're live on air, that is pretty bizarre, actually, and a really interesting thing thinking about it, because coming down the road, say 20 or 30 years in the future, y'all were around and y'all actually were on our show, when it happened, and were listening to us talk about it. Like, that's a pretty wild thing to think about right there. You know, like, that's one of the interesting things of history that only happens once. You know, you don't see things like that happen a lot. Or another pretty pivotal and interesting one was when Queen Elizabeth II died just hours before we came on air. Like, we came on air 5 hours after the announcement was made that Queen Elizabeth II was dead. Like, that's a pretty wild thing to think about. Like, when you think about the course of this channel and just all of the historical events that we've watched unfold just while we're running the show over 882 days, that was another pretty big one as well. And a whole bunch
also,
of
that time that Matt got messed up by that Chipotle, that was a big one too.
Oh, that was a
I'll
big
never
one.
forget it.
That was a really big one. But if y'all see what I mean there, like, those are the kind of things that are once in a century, once in an era kind of things. Like, the last time anyone as influential as Queen Elizabeth II passed in as the head of state of the United Kingdom, or the sovereign of the United Kingdom, was Queen Victoria. You know, and Queen Elizabeth II reigned longer than Queen Victoria. Like, that is a historical moment right there, to watch someone like that pass and be around for it and witness that in real time. But that's like one of the things I was talking about recently that's really interesting to see, because you get to see at the end of an era, much like it would have happened during Queen Victoria's time, or an assassination on a Japanese prime minister, which is practically unheard of in Japanese history. Well, it's practically unheard of, but not really. But still, y'all, I think y'all get what I'm saying now, is that y'all were around to live during those times, whether it was a great thing, a tragedy, a triumph. Y'all were around to see it, and it's a part of the story of y'all's lives that y'all get to tell decades down the road. And that's the really interesting thing about living through historical times, is that they become a part of your own story, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I thought I would talk about that a little bit more, because maybe that presses the point home that that's about the kind of things that are really unique that only y'all got to live through, and people in the future will be hearing y'all stories about living through those times. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to DS, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, DS, for the support. And it said, my 4-year-old girl said super chat.
Hey, they're learning, but still, I gotta say, thank you so much for the support, DS. And that is pretty interesting to hear that your 4-year-old daughter said super chat. Apparently, she has heard Matthew and me say that a lot on stream, and I'm guessing that your 4-year-old daughter must be watching this stream. And I gotta say, I'm highly honored.
Wait a minute. At what age does a child learn to speak?
I think like 2.
Is that right?
Let me pull it up. When do most children say their first words? Between 10 and 14 months of age.
Oh, that's young. I've never had kids, obviously, so I don't know, but that's young.
Man, you said that so matter-of-factly. You said, man, that's young. I've never had kids. It's like, dude, like, it's like, wait, why do you have to say it like that? But beyond that, yeah. It's
Listen, I mean, I've never had kids or anything, but I mean, if I did, they would speak at 2.
Man, man, I'm telling you, man. But still, beyond that, I got to thank you so much for support, DS. And that is pretty interesting to hear that your 4-year-old daughter said super chat. And I'm guessing she must watch this show a good bit along with you. And I got to say, you're starting her off well. You know, the Elite Spring Army is a great place to grow and learn, because there's so many smart people here in the live chat that are always throwing out interesting stuff that even I don't know. So I'm sure she'll have a very voluminous knowledge by the time she goes to 1st grade. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, DS. I hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here goes to Live, Laugh, Love, Toaster Bath, who puts in a $15 donation, and thank you very much, Live, Laugh, Toaster Bath. Whoa, Jack. But they said, check out the Ghost Shark UUV, produced here in Australia, because it looks pretty cool. And what are your thoughts?
The Ghost Shark UUV. Is that big thing, that big chunk? Yeah, that's a big chunky. A big chunky. Let me go get Big Chunky. Let me show y'all Big Chunky. This is Big Chunky.
Wait a minute, that's the thing?
Yes, this is Big Chunky.
Oh, is that the thing, Jack?
I call it Big Chunky. I've seen this thing before. I looked at it and went, huh, that looks like Big Chunky. And then I moved on. But yes, that thing is pretty neat. I'll actually go to Wikipedia so that way I can read you all the exact specs about this thing because I've seen it before. I was like, that's kind of neat. So here's what it is. It's an autonomous underwater vehicle that is being jointly developed by Anduril Industries and the Department of Defense for the Royal Australian Navy. 3 prototypes have been ordered, and the first of the submarines was publicly revealed in April of 2024, just this year. And the role is that it will provide a stealthy, long-range, autonomous undersea warfare capability that can conduct persistent intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and strike, and enhance Navy's abilities to operate with allies and partners. So, pretty much going on with that very ambiguous statement, it is largely an intelligence gathering system, but it also has a limited ability to conduct some sort of strike operations. So, pretty cool to know about this thing. It seems to me to be a lot like the American Stingray, but of an Australian origin. And I gotta say, the design is pretty unique. It's pretty much just a big brick that moves through the water. But hey, if it works, it works. And also, to give you all an idea of the scale of this thing, because you can't really tell how big it is here, that's how big it is compared to an average sized person.
That thing could probably carry a nuke.
It probably could. Australia isn't nuclear armed, though, sadly, but it could carry a nuke if they wanted it to. I would put money on that. And imagine, man,
We could let them finance one.
Well, we could always lease them one, you know, depending on its return, you know, or something like that.
Yeah, they get the good residuals on the lease.
Man, I'm telling
The
you, man.
residuals is we keep living.
Yeah, man, it's true. But still, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Live, laugh, love Toaster Bath. And, did I get that right? Yeah, live, laugh, love.
Live,
Toaster
laugh,
Bath.
love, toaster bath.
I gotta tell you, those toaster baths are electrifying. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much for throwing in a little interesting rabbit hole right there. Underwater drones seem to be becoming the future of naval warfare, and if it is, that'll be incredibly cool to see developing in front of our eyes. You see, that's one of those things where you can go, "That's cool." You know what I mean, folks? Like, y'all are at the cusp of drone-based naval warfare, like you're seeing it in Ukraine with the Sea Babies, and now we're seeing larger countries like Australia and America and pretty much everyone else developing their own versions of it as well. Something that no one else has lived through in history before and will ever live through in history again. Y'all were here for it and no one else was. That's what's cool about history. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one. You know, when I say that crap, Matthew, I sound like a high school teacher trying to get kids hyped up for the class. I'm like, that's what's cool about history. But anyways, we're on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Wilderness LSA Latvia, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, Wilderness, for that support once again. He says, "I'm drinking my morning coffee from an LSA mug, and so proud." Clapping emoji, slightly crying emoji, the loving emoji, also the peace emoji, and the yellow heart emoji for heart disease. Not really, but thank you very much for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, I find that very offensive. But yeah, I'm just kidding with you. But still, thank you so much for the support, Wilderness LSA Latvia. It's really cool to hear that you're drinking out of the LSA mug with the eagle on it and everything. That is so freaking cool. And I hope that that coffee tasted even better because of that. Probably tasted the same. But hey, I like to be optimistic. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Thank you so much for getting a mug, and thank you for being so proud of the Lee Spring Army and this channel and everything that we've done. It's been incredibly cool. I gotta say, we absolutely love to know that people love the LSA, and I love to know that people have the LSA merch out there and are repping that set. And so with that, thank you so much once again in helping this channel to keep it running. I hope I addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next. But of course, a huge shout out to our LSA Latvian viewer who is the hoof trimmer. Incredibly cool profession. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, I see DS was sitting here talking about, "I love knowing the littles love the enforcers." Lead right. I got to tell you what, DS, I was thinking about what you said in your super chat about your 4-year-old girl liking the stream. I got to admit, if your 4-year-old is already interested in stuff like this, like world politics and huge topics
They're
like
going
this,
places.
That's very promising because at 4 years old, I was simply happy to be here, watching Winnie the Pooh on the Honda Odyssey like a little DVD player and stuff like that, and also all the old Disney cartoons. I was just happy to be around. So that's a very promising sign. You might have Einstein in your hands or something there because that's crazy. They're watching this and actually like watching it. Because me personally, I want to know what I was watching at 4 years old. If I saw this, I've been like, "What's all that?" I don't have known anything. But anyways. Moving on to our next super chat, we have a $10 super chat from Heather Fitzgibbon, as well as a 10 from John Garner. And huge shout out to both of you for that support. And no comment to address, but Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, thank you so much for the support to both Heather Fitzgibbon and John Garner for both of y'all's support. Y'all didn't throw in comments, but the support says a lot and helps us to be able to keep this channel rolling. And I gotta greatly appreciate y'all and thank y'all so much for that and helping this channel to keep on rolling. Because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And we wouldn't be able to cover this news. And so we owe y'all a massive thank you. And there it is right there. Thank you. And thank you both of y'all once again for being old guards as well and having been with this channel for years at this point. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, I'm seeing a lot of people request that marmot. I'm not sure if he's hanging around or something, but I'm seeing a lot of people asking for him. So can we bring him out? Can we have Alan?
Could we? I don't know. Can we? Could we? I don't know. Hey! It's the moment!
Alan.
Welcome back,
Alan. Oh, hello, good sir. It's good to see you once again. If you'll notice, I chipped off an extra nanometer of the top tooth. It's almost down to the nub, but it's good to see you once again. And also, guess what? Guess what's doing swell? And guess what's not doing swell? The hot dog man. Look at him down there. Look at him.
Why does God make me suffer? Aw, man. You do it, you told!
You suffer because you suffer. It's that simple.
Why do I have to keep losing subscribers? Maybe they're too stupid for my channel. Aw, man.
Because it's your destiny to lose subscribers. It's your destiny, good sir. He said, when shall I reach 100,000 subscribers? And we said, that's not the question to ask, good sir. The question is, when will you reach 20,000 subscribers?
Aw, man, I'm gonna talk some hot shit on Twitter after I block them. Aw, man, gonna shave down that goatee into being a Dr. Disrespect mustache and get a Mr. T haircut. They never can make fun of me now. Aw, man. Oh, man. Dude, you know, like, well, why do we get blocked on Twitter? Why do we get blocked on Twitter? What was up with that, Matty? I mean, what did the heat in the kitchen get a little too hot? Like, what was up with that?
All I said, man, was this. I don't even know why. It hurt his feelings so deeply he had to block us. He had said something about the cancel culture stuff. And I said, dude, you're the king of cancel culture. And that was enough for him to block us. Meanwhile, he's over there saying the most vile stuff that can't even repeat about us. And at the same time, I let him have free reign for quite some time before I finally blocked him. But yet, he can't take the heat. He's the stereotypical bully, man. He's out here dishing it, but he can't take it. And he's getting served up the disrespect on a dish. He's getting it served up well here recently. We've been roasting the hell out of him.
Yeah, and I'm still wondering where that lazy bastard's hit piece is. We've been talking about that for like 2 weeks. And I know where it is. It's literally been made at this point, Matty. I know it's been made, and it's a video file sitting on that computer. But because I keep on bringing up that his lazy ass, that Dr. Disrespect mustache, Mr. T hair having ass, is not putting out that video, he's holding on to it until I drop it, and then he's going to put it out, and that's like, look, he doesn't tell me what to do. I do it when I want to. It's some stupid, like, third grade crap like that. And I know it.
Also, I see here, Epic Trains Canada said, he's like, I know you guys make fun of me during the marmot. And Epic Trains said, well, yeah, that's the whole point we do. It's like nobody's hiding that. It's like, we know we're making fun of the hot dog man during the marmot segment. It's like, no bones being made about that. It's like he stumbled across a revelation here. It's like, I'm being made fun of during that segment. I just found out.
You know what's better, dude, is that he sits there and he's like, I'm going to expose them. You know when they say the hot dog man and they make fun of the person called the hot dog man? That's me. It's like, duh, no shit. Like, it's like we're making fun of the hot dog man. That's the whole point of the thing. Like, it's like, you know, like the guy made our lives a living hell. for a year, like minimum, a year and a half, like it tops, like if you want to really put it out there like that. And it's like, do you think I'm not going to make fun of someone like that who made our lives hell? I mean, like they tried to have us swatted at law school while we were there. Like this person is a reprehensible, foul person, and we're not going to let them ever get any slack at this point. Like I'm very adamant on that. Like, you know, because some people are like, oh man, like you keep bringing him up, and I do, because every time we bring this guy up, like I mean, we don't mention him by name, by the way. I'll have y'all know that. We never give this guy a lick of publicity off of this. But we call that man the hot dog man, and he knows that that's him. And he knows that we're making fun of him. And it eats his ass alive to be made fun of because he's such a narcissist. And so we make fun of this guy day in and day out. Every stream, we make sure to include something. And his little people who watch the stream every day, they go through, because we can see it, and they clip little parts where we make fun of him, and they tailor package it, and they send it off right to him, so you can see all the hot hits of this stream where we made fun of everything. The haircut, the mustache, all of it. And that just eats that guy alive. And I gotta say, that is something worth being around for, is making sure to make that guy's at least mindset as unhappy as it can be, because he's constantly talking about us over there and trying to still do whatever his delusional mind thinks. And it's just good to know, because we went from being the harassed to now we know that the guy is very unhappy because we just keep talking crap about him, and he never gets that breathing room that we used to give when we were like, okay, we think he's dropped it, we're going to drop it and move on. And he would get that little bit of breathing room to come back and make it look fresh. He doesn't even get that chance anymore. And so I get a huge laugh out of that about every single day. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. I got to say, we absolutely enjoy it. And also, someone said, yeah, that was a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. But I gotta say, guy deserves every single second of it. I'm not ever going to back off of that. If someone in the future asked me if I was running for a political position, didn't you like make fun of this one guy on YouTube? I'd be like, oh hell yeah, like I did. Like, you know, like that's nothing I'm going to deny. There's like hours of footage of that out there. We made fun of that guy to hell and back because he made our lives hell for about a year and a half. So, you know, it's just making sure to return the dues at this point. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we're going to be moving on into our next one. But I hope y'all enjoyed this nice little marmot, this beautiful, precious marmot. And so, Matthew, what do we got next?
All right, so our next super chat goes to Jay Bagwell, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Jay, for that support as well. He said, in terms of war analysis, military equipment, and geopolitics, there's the Enforcer channel, and then there's everyone else.
Dang.
And you're the only channel making long-term for Western interests.
And thank you so much for the kind words, Jay Bagwell. We now as far as saying there's me and everyone else, I will say this: there are groups out there that do give me a run for my money, and may even outdo me. And I will say, without a doubt, the Institute for the Study of War is certainly one of those groups that is on par with me or giving me a run for my money. I would say they're really giving me a run for my money because they usually are on par with their analysis. Like, they're very good at what they do most of the time. But sometimes they put things out that I disagree with and I think isn't really the case. But they still do incredibly good. Whether I disagree with them or not, it's kind of like beside the point. But they do incredibly good. But there are others out there where it's just like, you know, it's like that's rough. You know, like it's just not really any kind of analysis at all. It's just people trying to say stuff so that way they can put out a video that has ads on it and make AdSense. You know, it's like, that's not really analysis. That's just drivel. And I got to thank you so much for the kind words, Jay Bagwell, and always being a fan of this channel, always supporting us and helping us to keep this thing running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. We wouldn't have been able to be around for so long. And I got to say that we always love to see you out there on the Twitter doing what you do. It's pretty fun to see. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And of course, we will always be here, and really, I will always live through my entire life, whether it be in this channel or not, to support and further the interests of the United States of America, and in a greater sense, the entirety of the Western world. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address it incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Greg Carmen, who puts in a 10, and he says, thank you for keeping information flowing, and please take one from the chat.
And thank you so much for the support, Greg, Carmen, and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who help to make this thing possible. And thank you so much for enjoying that the information is flowing. We make it flow like water, and I hope that you do enjoy that greatly. And I think you do, because you thanked us for it. And we will make sure to take a question from the chat. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
And this one goes to Supernova, who says, does the U.S. still buy Russian uranium, or have we found another supplier? And cheers, you legends.
And thank you so much for the cheers, ye legends. And I believe that we still... I don't know if we do or don't, actually. I'd have to declare ignorance on that one. Let's Google it. Does America buy Russian uranium? Let's see here. What does the U.S. get uranium from Russia? Russia has roughly 44% of the world's uranium enrichment capacity and supplies, approximately 35% of our imports for nuclear fuel, according to the Department of Energy, and that was published in 2024 this year. So, yes, we still do buy a pretty high amount of uranium from the Russian Federation. That's fairly interesting to know. Also, y'all want to see yellow cake uranium and what it looks like? This is why it's called a yellow cake, is because it literally looks kind of like a yellow sponge cake a little bit.
Interesting. It's yellow.
It's literally yellow. Usually, if you know a lot about industrial naming conventions, you would actually think that this is not yellow. Like, you would just think that that's kind of like a name they came up with it for, but it's actually yellow. Like, refined uranium is yellow. It's really weird. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for asking a really interesting live chat. I hope I was able to get a good answer for that. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Where the Hell is Revel, who puts in a 10 and says the Aussie exercise is called Pitch Black, and it involves air units from Australia, Thailand, Philippines, Korea, and Japan.
And let's see here. Let's pull this thing up. So apparently a military aircraft has crashed in the exercise just 23 hours ago. Let's see. Oh, it was a Eurofighter. Oh, dang, that's kind of an expensive loss right there. Unfortunate. But beyond that, let's see here. Let me make sure to reread that. It involves air units from Australia, Thailand, Philippines, Korea, and Japan. And apparently Italy, because the Eurofighter was from Italy, which is really one hell of a flight to take to get in that exercise. But let's see here. When does this thing get held? It's apparently a yearly exercise, so it's kind of like our, what is it called, Matthew? It's like a red flag exercise, something like that. I forgot. They happen near Las Vegas. I forgot the name of them. But it's kind of like that a little bit. But let's see. It's a biennial warfare exercise hosted by the Australian Air Force. It's normally held in northern Australia near Darwin and Tyndall. The aim of the exercise is to practice offensive counter-air and defensive counter-air combat in a simulated war environment. It traditionally consists of a red team and a blue team based at separate locations, with one attacking the other. As inferred from the name of the exercise, it will take place in low light conditions, pretty much night. So that is really interesting to know. Pretty neat. And I have actually not really heard a lot about this exercise before, but that is a really interesting one. And maybe I'll look into it a little bit more. But of course, unfortunate to hear that an Italian Eurofighter was lost in a crash during the exercise just 23 hours ago. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this super chat goes to Ben Ite, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much for that support. He said, let's get crazy. As an Alaskan western border invasion, quote-unquote, boots on the ground by Russia and North Korea, a sea invasion on California and Mexico by China, and surely there's an expansion plan.
I thank you so much for the support, Ben. I would have to say that a naval invasion of the Russians on Alaska and by the Chinese on the U.S. mainland down in the lower 48 would be next to impossible. The Navy logistics, the maritime logistics required for such a successful invasion, especially against the bulk or the bulwark of U.S. forces that would be based in Alaska and also in the lower 48, would be next to impossible. That's one thing that can largely be guaranteed by the United States, really North America's isolated geography, is that any kind of a sizable invasion would practically be impossible for most major powers, even China as a superpower, because you would require such a massive and considerable navy, one which has not really been seen since World War II, and even then, that would have been fairly tough to pull off, to be able to land a large enough force at the United States and then be able to continue on an invasion. I would say that that kind of a plan probably does not exist for the large part. Because it just would be next to impossible to pull that off successfully, especially considering that they would be going up against primetime America, considering that our military is the strongest it's ever really been in peacetime since the end of World War II. So with that, I hope that does address that well. I thank you so much once again for support. Very interesting idea, though. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a super chat, which goes to Jason Carney, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much for that support as well. And he said, "Who is Hot Dog Man? New viewer here."
We don't mention Hot Dog Man's name, Jason Carney. If we said who Hot Dog Man really was, it'd give him the publicity he's looking for. Because he knows. He knows the truth is, he knows this, that he kind of sucks as a YouTuber. Like, he is a YouTuber, I'll tell you that. But he kind of sucks as a YouTuber to the point that he really can't make original, independent content of his own and grow his channel that way. So what he does is he tries to make rage bait pieces on other people, specifically within the Ukraine war community. He's not only taking shots at us, he's taking shots at just about everyone else in the Ukraine war community, trying to sap subscribers off of them by making them think that that guy's a bad guy and he's actually a good guy for calling him out. But beyond that, he can't grow on his own. And that's one thing that's become really clear to us after we've observed the guy for over 2 years now, because he's been, harassing us for about 2 years, so he's always been on the radar a little bit over 2 years, is that he doesn't really gain subscribers at all. Actually, over the past few months, he's almost been constantly losing subscribers, which is really interesting because people find out the guy's either crazy or he's really annoying and they unsubscribe and they leave and go find someone else. But sadly, we can't go into the name. But that is generally the guy we're talking about. He's a YouTuber, I can say that. And he is certainly one of the YouTubers, one of the worst, really, at least in our opinion, but that's because the guy doxed us and harassed us and has community harassed us and physically threatened us with harm and tried to have us doxed at our law school and then tried to have us swatted at our law school, and all sorts of other things, defamed us, all that, it was a whole ordeal. And now, and after a while, he went from this delusional thing, just to give you a little bit of background, he went from this delusional idea that he would be able to destroy us just by lying about us enough. That didn't work. And so now he tries to play the victim card these days after the aggressive "I'm going to destroy them" tactic didn't work on us. Then he uses the victim card now. "Oh, I'm being bullied by this giant YouTube channel that I keep harassing, and they keep on shooting back at me, and now I'm a victim. Oh, boo-hoo." And so that's what he does now. It's a really pathetic existence for that guy. And there's a load of stuff he says a load of stuff about us and has in the past, and the videos are still up that he has on his channel about us, and they're all unfounded statements that are completely untrue. But if we wanted to go the same route about him and make a video about him, there's plenty of subject matter to ridicule and criticize just about how he exists as a person. Making his viewers pretty much pay his way for a free vacation in a war zone just for one. That's one good example. But then there's a whole lot of others. But still, we can't mention his name. It is a name that will never be mentioned. He is only known as the Hot Dog Man. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support, and we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in an $8 donation. And thank you very much, Margaret, for that support as well. She said, "I'm still here, lurking and listening, and happy birthday to you, Matthew." And thank you very much for the happy birthday wishes as well, Margaret. I appreciate it very much, and I did have a good one indeed. And also, it's good to know you're still here as well, lurking and listening. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, it is good to hear that you're still lurking and listening, Margaret Hemsley. We're always wondering where you are sometimes, but I'm happy to know that you're still lurking. We'd love to know it. And of course, great to know that you're one of our Elite Spring Army viewers from Western Australia. And also, thank you so much for wishing Matthew a happy birthday. The happy birthdays are still coming in a day later, beyond when we announced it, but we are still happy to hear that. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who helped to make this thing possible. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to Mark of Reality, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much as well for the support. They said the European Union needs to slap a 65% tariff on everything from China and use the money to help Ukraine. But here's the thing, though, Mark. Here's the thing. It sounds like a good idea on its face. It really does. But the catch is, with tariffs on imports, like, for example, from China, that difference in the money right there, the cost of goods being higher because of the tariff, always gets passed on to the consumer. So the average person, the normal person making a normal salary, is the person who really ends up hurting the most from tariffs like that. And while, it's just tough. It's really not a really good solution to put tariffs on stuff without transferring it to the consumer. So I just don't think it's a real solution. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that it sounds like a good idea, but the other thing as well is that if the European Union pretty much acknowledges that China is an open supporter of Russia and then treats them that way, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in its own sense. Because while China is, of course, interlinked with the Russians, that's very clear at this point, and they provide support, they don't provide lethal support from what we know at the moment. If the European Union started to openly treat China like they are a pro-Russian nation, supporting them completely in the war, China will have no reason to hold back, and they probably will start to give large amounts of lethal aid to the Russians, which will start to heavily change the balance currently in the war in Ukraine, which would be actually detrimental to Ukraine. So I would say the European Union stance currently of neutrality, not supporting or condemning the Chinese, is probably the best way to go, at least as far as the war in Ukraine is going, because you don't really want to push the people who are kind of on the fence or kind of a little bit leaning towards one side or another too much, because then they might go all the way in because they really have no reason not to. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Really interesting idea, though, Mark of Reality. And if it wasn't for the fear that the Chinese would go all in supporting the Russians, I would say that's a really good idea. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Wyatt Logan, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Wyatt, as well. He says, hello, LSA, and kind of cool to chat with a future president and bro. And I hope you all have a wonderful night. And even Chris's mom, she looked sad, sad walking when I drove by. Oh, no.
Oh, no. Well, I thank you for the support, Wyatt Logan. And I got to say that it is something interesting to hear. Oh, Matthew, look, we got a bot. Look, we got him.
Bot be gone, baby.
Bot
Bot
be
be
gone.
gone.
Shh, man,
His name shall not be spoken, and he shall do what he's told.
Oh, man, dude, I love to hear it. Man, he's very popular in Ukraine, like hell he is. Sure, he's popular in the bars where he spends all the money. I gotta say, that's a good one, though. Really funny. But still, beyond that, thank you so much for saying that's cool talking to a future president, Wyatt Logan. You got some high hopes. You actually think I'm going to become the president one day. And I got to thank you for that kind of a belief in me, because I hope that I can believe in myself that kind of a way to come off confidently in that election and win in 2040. And I got to say that I hope you have a wonderful night as well, Wyatt Logan. And of course, Chris's mom didn't have that great of a night, and neither did the hot dog man. Oh, man. But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to LSA Sergeant Figment, who puts in a 2. He says, LSA, hit the like button. That's an order.
And that is in order. Hit that like button. But still, thank you so much for the support. LSA Sergeant Figment, always supporting the channel, always helping you to keep on running, and thank you for always encouraging folks to hit the like button. We've gotten up to 3,200 likes tonight, and that is pretty wild to see. Really cool to know, too, that so many people have enjoyed the stream, and I got to thank y'all. And what's funny, Matthew, is that that's more likes than Hot Dog Man gets views. Oh, man, but still, thank you so much once again for support, LSA Sergeant Figment. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the last super chat, and then we're going to be moving on into the live chats.
And our last one goes to William Cullison, who puts in a $1 donation without a comment. And thank you very much, William, as well, for supporting the channel, and we appreciate it very much. And with that, we're now moving on from our Super Chat segment, and we're moving into our live chat segment. But of course, up first, we have the Morse code decoders of the stream. And tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Paul Schultz, Kevin J., Rumpelstiltskin, and David Millsaps. They said, the Morse code tonight says, Russia is getting very concerned over that NATO presence in Finland, and it's something that will affect them soon, and LSA.
And That's the sound of money! And y'all got that down on the nail. That was the Moscow message of the night. I gotta congratulate y'all for that. That is absolutely impressive that y'all been able to get that correct time and time again. And y'all continue to get it correct time and time again. And I gotta say, a huge shout out and a huge thank you to all of you once again for getting that Moscow message correct. And I'd have to say that the Moscow message stands true tonight as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the live chat segment. And so with that, we are on to the first live chat of the night.
And the first one goes to AF Kaplan, who says, will this joint incident with Russia and China near Alaska have any impact on Ukraine's pursuit of closer ties with China?
No, not really. I don't think so, because China has been taking hostile actions against the United States the entire war. Like, you know, when I say hostile, I don't mean open warfare. I just mean actions that are clearly aggressive against the United States in the region. They have said aggressive things. They have done aggressive things. It's been a very tense time during the war in Ukraine in this region of the world, and that doesn't really seem to have swayed Ukraine's decision making when it comes to dealing with China or wanting to try and deal with China. So I would say it probably will not affect them at all. You'll probably see that kind of messaging that we've been seeing for a while will continue really without stopping or slowing, in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. With that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to John, who says two things: are the trains hauling the tanks fair targets in the war, and also a good channel for everything boats is what's going on with shipping. Very good.
And I would have to say, I thank you so much, John, for saying that interesting statement. I'll have to look into that here in a second about the boats, because I've many of y'all may know this already. I'm actually really big into public infrastructure stuff, like the electrical infrastructure, railroad infrastructure, the shipping for that matter as well. That kind of stuff is really interesting to me because it has to do with large scale logistics and other things like that, and that's always interesting to me. So I'll have to check out those channels. I really do like Brick and Mortar though. They do very well at covering different kinds of disasters at sea and talking about what the NTSB or any other investigatory agencies were able to conclude about the incident. Very interesting channel, but those sound really good too, and I'll have to check them out. And also, I would say trains hauling military equipment in the war are military targets. If they are carrying anything or conducting any efforts vital to the Russian war effort, that does make them a military target. So while a civilian train carrying just normal goods would not be a military target, a civilian train carrying tanks is a military target. It is involved in the operation of military logistics, and therefore does clearly fall under the concept of being a target of war. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Quantum Fighter, who says, check out the landscapes of Lapland, our native people land. He said, hardest winter soldiers there was ever. We need more people, Enforcer.
And Lapland does need more people. And let's check out the Lapland. What does it look like in the Lapland?
Beautiful.
Oh, this is actually really nice looking, man. Like, that's actually like I don't know what I was expecting. I was kind of expecting a swamp, but this is like forest. Huh. It's really pretty. I like the trees too, like these specific species of trees. They're beautiful. I like them. I like them a lot. Let's look at a town up here in Lapland. Let's look at this.
Oh.
Huh?
Excuse me. I now see. I had to go get a snack during the break. I went and grabbed those nerds things,
no.
cluster things. I was trying to chew one down as really fast so I could jump in that segment. And I started chewing, and then I realized, I started choking. And I turned the mic on mute and said I was fighting for my life, like while you were yapping about the Lapland and the swamp and everything like that. I was over here fighting for my life.
Dude, and then you came back on and you went, oh. It's like, dude, you dying? It's like, you good? But they have a subway, Film Town,
Oh,
Moda,
Film Town.
And then they have Sampo Keskus. Cool.
Huh, interesting.
But yeah, this is not a bad
There's a
place.
Rav Club.
Rav or Roy? I can't tell if it's Roy Club or Rav Club because that V kind of looks like a Y.
I can't even tell.
I
Come on, Jack. I mean, whoa.
Moving on from that. What does a hotel look like? Arctic City Hotel. $103 a night. What does it look like in a hotel like this? Oh, look at that.
Oh, not bad, Jack.
I don't know what's up with the pillows, but cool.
Look at that thing on the bed.
Dude, that's like a deer or something like that. That's really nice. But what is up with these pillows? Like,
Huh.
I don't know. Like, the pillows are kind of weirding me out. I don't know.
Is this Rob Club or is this a hotel?
I don't know, man. I mean, like, I heard that apparently if you try and get a room, they can swing it. You know what I mean? Like, swing it. You know, like, they could, like hell, man, I heard that the hotel staff is so good at swinging deals in this hotel, they call them swingers. You know what I mean? Like I don't know. I don't know, man, but I've heard some interesting things about that hotel. How about the Hostel Cafe Cody? This looks like the Palast der Republik in East Germany. Like, I'm not kidding. It's like a tiny version of it. Dude, what is up with this bathroom? This is like some sci-fi crap right there with like the coloring. Like, that kind of weirds me out.
It looks like a public restroom, really.
Oh, yes. The barracks. Like, $50 a night for the barracks. I'll pass. Like, I think I'm good.
Yeah, I'll pass.
Aw, man. Pay for my trip to the barracks, you bastard. Anyways, let's see. This is not the train station. This is like some mall. Where's the train? They got to have a train. Here we go. This is their train station. What kind of trains do they have in Finland? Huh. Oh.
It says VR on the front. It's virtual reality. It's like an Oculus Rift train.
That's it. Welcome to virtual reality. We take you to another city in your mind. Oh, look, a lumber car. That's cool, but I want to see the passenger locomotives. Oh, dude, that's like some old German vintage right there. Like, no joke. That looks like one of those old German shunting trains. But they all kind of look the same in Europe. Let's see here. Here we go. That looks like a Skoda, or it looks like a Russian TEM. Like, one or the other. Like, if I'm getting those names right. It looks like it's either Czech or Russian, what the Finns use for their rail transport. But that rail coach over there on the other track, dude, that's actually pretty sick looking. I like that.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad at all.
Oh, dude, and the interiors are pretty lush. Is this like, I wonder if this is first class or economy, because this looks like first class to me with like how like padded the seats are, you know?
Man, it looks like just regular like airline seat or something.
Get the hell out of here, man. You have not seen economy class on like a GWR class 800. Let me go get that. Economy class class 800. And let me see if I can go get this for you, Matthew, because oh my goodness, you don't know what economy class on a class 800 looks like. Bro, you in for a shock. No, let me go get this. Okay, so this is a class 800. This is the new, well, new, I say new, it's been around for a while now, like 6 years or so, but this is the new train that they made for the United Kingdom that is all electric, and it's supposed to be like their high-speed, like, long-distance express train and commuter at the same time. But this is what the business class interior of a class 800 looks like.
Huh, that's interesting. I'll be honest with you. Like, when we walked through these cars, one of those cars smelled really bad.
Man, that thing reeked. But it's, like, no joke, it reeked. Can I get you a picture of first class? Yes, I can. This is what first class looks like. Notice how the seats are just a little bit more plush? That's what you pay for in first class.
These look nicer, I'll admit.
Yeah, they do look nicer. And then you have standard class. That's what standard class looks like on a GWR class 800.
They're sitting on hardwood.
Dude, you're sitting on that plank. Like they call that damn thing the plank. And then this is what the LNER first class looks like. And this is also what their standard class looks like.
It's just the same with different upholstery.
Yeah, it's a class 800. It's this is what the mock-up first class looked like in the prototype. Which honestly looked better than the actual implementation, and standard class looked like hell. Like it looked worse.
Why is this like one of those pictures you take for like nostalgia or something like that? You show like in the nostalgia like lineup for a compilation or something, talking about the way it used to be, and they like show you a picture like this.
It's like one of those compilations of people not from the 90s would never understand, and they're playing that like nostalgia music where it goes. Yeah, Yeah, some crap like that. While they like have the picture slowly like pan across the screen or something. It's something like that. But yeah, dude, like that is certainly first class on a Finnish train because economy class these days looks like garbage. Also, whoever made this Wikipedia page apparently is really obsessed with the Class 800 because they actually made like a layout of like the liveries for the different brands that are running the Class 800s. And they got it
I've
right.
never seen that before, ever.
Me either. I have never seen this. And they got it right too, which is actually kind of the shocking thing about it. Like the LNER is correct and the GWR one is a GWR, but they're missing the GWR and LNER labels on these things because those usually are on the side front of the coach, but they don't have them. But hey, what am I complaining? They put it here. That's pretty impressive in its own right. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Rob Eisman once again. He says China would need the Taiwan chip facility intact, or otherwise wouldn't they be cutting their own throat? Yes. And
Yes.
they really would, honestly. Like, that's why people were concerned that there were some rumors going around that TSMC might try to explode their facilities if China ever invaded, which would negate the benefit of invading Taiwan, because that's what China's really after is the chips.
And I would have to say, yes, they would be shooting themselves in the foot, but not only that, they would shoot the world in the foot, because with the TSMC factories destroyed, the tooling and manufacturing abilities that are in TSMC would have to be rebuilt from the ground up, which would be wildly expensive, and it would take years from what we know. So they wouldn't be just shooting themselves in the foot. They would be shooting everyone in the world in the foot if the TSMC factory ever got destroyed or sabotaged by the Taiwanese government and blown up in a war. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Very good question, though, and that's kind of the repercussions of having a major semiconductor factory in a possible war zone, is that they could set back the entire world, at least in the information technology sphere, by years, maybe even a decade or two. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. Great question, though, Rob. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Kenneth Prosak, who says, so are the Russian and China airplanes, are those flying near Alaska as mainland attack practices?
Not really. Usually those are an attempt at gauging combat readiness of an enemy air force and air defense. So what happens with that? Let's just say, let's take it from an American perspective instead of a Chinese or Russian perspective. We will send our B-52Hs over the Arctic towards Russia, towards the area of the Barents Sea, which would be upon an attack route to start targeting and destroying some of the most major infrastructure within the Russian Federation in between St. Petersburg and Moscow. That's where back in the day, even up until the present day, a strategic bomber would loiter out here in the Barents Sea, drop off its cruise missiles, and then it'd turn around and fly back to America. So what we do when we do that is that we want the Russians to see that on radar. We want them to go, oh crap, it looks like they're coming. We need to turn them around and see what's going on. And then the Soviet Air Force, well, the Russian Air Force in the modern day, gives the order for their aircraft to scramble and take off and intercept those bombers. And the U.S. bombers the entire time are gauging how long it takes for them to finally be intercepted by a Russian aircraft and how they act and how their flying is. Because all of it is a test to see how ready the Russians actually are if a conflict was to begin. So it's pretty much like giving them a pop quiz of a sort, and then we grade them and see on that pop quiz, how well did they perform? Was it an A? Does it look like they're really sharp and ready to go? Was it a B? It was maybe some things they could perfect. A C, a D, or an F? Like, did they just completely fail? Did they not even respond at all? Does it look like they're wildly incompetent? That's what those kinds of bomber operations are for, is to try and see how bad off or how well off the enemy air force is if a full-on conflict was to begin. What kind of responses, what kind of activities could we expect from that air force? And that's what that was meant to achieve today with the Russian and Chinese bombers flying around Alaska. And so with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I've got to thank each and every single one of y'all so much once again for watching. Over the course of this stream, about 7.5 thousand of y'all were here, and 55,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. We were entirely honored to have each and every single one of y'all here, and we greatly enjoyed y'all being here and watching this news. If y'all did enjoy, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And of course, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, thank you all once again for watching, and thank you all for another great stream. And with that, we'll see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern for our next nightly war news stream. And also, the Enforcer will probably see you midday tomorrow as well for the next short war summary. But with that, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Get some rest, and good night.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards. Смотри!